All right, so I think we're live at 1:02 p.m. I will call to order the Finance Committee budget hearings. I believe we're on day 4, and it is Tuesday, April 19th. If we could get a roll call, please.
Yes. Councilor Villarreal.
Yes. I mean, here, present.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Here.
Councilor Cassett.
Here.
Councilor Lindell.
Here.
And Councilor Romero Worth.
I'm here.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to approval of the agenda. I do believe we have a change to the agenda. Director McCoy, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, Madam Chair, we will be postponing ARPA to Tuesday, April 26th. That was the first item up on the agenda. Today, we will be focusing on community development in the 5 departments, including affordable housing, arts and culture, planning and land use, economic development, and tourism. I think that is the focus for today.
Great. And I think there's plenty there to keep us busy for the next few hours. So with that change, if there aren't other changes or other questions, if we could get a motion, please.
Move to approve as amended.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. If we could get a roll call, please.
Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Cassett.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
And Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. All right. As I mentioned, this is day 4, week 2 of these budget hearings. We've covered a lot of ground. We still have a lot of work yet to do, many departments and divisions yet to hear from. And in addition, we need to circle back tomorrow on 2 of the budgets that were problematic last week. So we have got another full week. And then next, we will be using our extra day on Tuesday to look at the ARPA funding, the federal money that's coming to us, and how that will be utilized. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for your attention and your work. Very, very important as we look to the priorities and understanding the budget for next year. And so again, my job will be to try to keep an eye on the time and keep us moving. Please be respectful of each other and the time that we have allotted to get through all this work because it is considerable. So with that, I believe we can move right into the first community development budget. And I don't know, Director McCoy, is there, or Director Brown, is there an order? Do you want to do these in the order they appear in the budget book and the order
Yes.
that they appear on the attachments? How do you want to go here? I'll just turn it over to you.
Madam
you,
Chair,
Madam Chair.
councilors, we do have a presentation that was uploaded to the agenda, and we'll be following that order. That being said, I'll turn it over to Director Brown for some opening remarks.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, if you may indulge me, and welcome to everyone and the members. I have just a quick opening remark. So thank you very much. At the Community Development Department, our mission is to and continues to be creating a Santa Fe where business residents and tourists thrive through effective land use, housing affordability, arts and culture, available jobs, business expansion, and resiliency. And over the last fiscal year, the Community Development Department has a few accomplishments that map to some of the highlights of the city's budget moving forward. Under creating housing and livable neighborhoods balanced with graceful growth, we've prepared a city-owned landfill lot in a historic neighborhood for donation to a development team to propose 5 affordable homes. Over 250 homes, affordable homes are under construction. Over half of them are inclusionary homes. 13 homeowners with very low incomes, most of them elderly, were assisted with home repair. 27 families have become home buyers using city-provided down payment assistance. We've completed a franchise agreement with Vexus Fiber to install fiber optics citywide. And the city was awarded 2 Main Street Urban Corridor grants to create great placemaking in Airport Road and Sila Rufino. Under creating jobs and rewarding careers, we've secured a 4-year contract with YouthWorks, and we've been funded and sponsored over 25 entrepreneur accelerator projects, industry programs, summer events, and festivals. Under helping those who need the most, Santa Fe Suites opens its doors. It opened the doors at 122 renters, including 40 residents who've experienced homelessness. Over 300 renters kept their homes or found new ones with payment for rents, utilities, arrears, and deposits. And we've completed the Atocha Mobile Home Park public Wi-Fi project with 8 more locations to go. Under land use guidance to support our community's desired future state, we have moved to online electronic application submittals. Director Cluck can provide a little bit more detail, but I think we've processed over 5,000 building permits and bought in about $6.7 million in permit fees. Under economic development, we've created and drafted cannabis legislation with a path to move forward. Over 100 business advisory connections have been made. We renewed our business contract with Santa Fe Business Incubator. And under adding capacity, we have a new land use director, Jason Kluck. And also we have 2 new hires in affordable housing. And we have 1 new business growth manager in economic development, a new assistant development director in the Office of Economic Development. So we will start in that order that Director McCoy said: affordable housing, arts and culture, economic development, land use and planning, and end with tourism. And with that, I can turn it over to Director Ladd, unless you have any questions for me.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am here to answer questions. I think you probably all just got a good rundown of some highlights from our past year.
Yes, and perfect, Alex.
If you, and I think if you could go through a little bit of some of the pullouts on the affordable housing budget, that would just be helpful for kind of setting the table, as it were.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to. I think the only addition to our budget, we have a big planning year coming up. We will be updating our 5-year strategic plan, which is something we do for the state of New Mexico to be compliant with the exemption to the anti-donation clause, the New Mexico Affordable Housing Act. We will also be updating our 5-year plan for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is a condition of our community development block grant entitlement funding that we get every year from HUD. So we are asking for an expansion to pay for the consultants to do the housing needs assessment and the fair housing assessment and all of the market analysis for these 2 major plans that we're doing this year. I think what shows up on our budget that seems alarming is this gigantic decrease, but that is just described in the highlights from Director McCoy. We had some prior year funds that we were able to carry forward to address some one-time needs related to responding to COVID last year. And so that's why it appears that we have less funding this year, but the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in this proposed budget is still funded at the $3 million mark. And this is about over a 50% increase from pre-pandemic, pre-2019 funding. So it's we're still well funded and moving forward with some really great projects and affordable housing supports in the upcoming year.
Okay. I think we can stop sharing the screen. We can always go back if we need to reference something. And are there questions from the committee? Yes, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. Is it Director Ladd? So you're not requesting any more or any additional staffing. It looks like you had 5 previously, and it looks like 5 recommended for 23. Are you okay with that? I assume you are. It's part of the budget, but I just want to make sure.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, thank you for asking that question. This is actually the first time we've had staff in 3 years. So I'm beside myself with happiness having all 5 positions filled. So our newest staff member joined us a little over a month ago. So we will, who knows, maybe next year we'll have a bunch more work for an additional staff member. But right now we're getting up to speed, and it's actually super exciting.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to double check on that. And then in the HR budget, there was a budget set aside for housing down payment for public safety. And I was thinking that would be better suited for your department. Am I somewhat okay? Am I thinking about that, or should that be somewhere else?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that is certainly something my department already does through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and our Community Development Block Grant. We administer funding for several down payment assistance programs. At this point, I think the idea behind this program is still, some of the details are still to be worked out, whether it's considered an employee benefit or whether it's considered a subsidy, and that would require a slightly different format for administering. But at the end of the day, the funding, we will have a provider to help us with the actual intake process, the figuring out what the eligibility or upholding the eligibility requirements, and helping folks navigate the housing market. So that piece won't be done in-house, and we only have a limited, as everyone is well familiar with, we have a wonderful home ownership support network here in Santa Fe provided by HomeWise, the Housing Trust, Habitat for Humanity on the home ownership side. So it is likely to be either one of those agencies or a combination of those agencies. In the past, all three have helped kind of on a one-time, first come, first serve basis to bring eligible clients forward for the down payment assistance.
All right, thank you, Director Ladd. I think that's all I had, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Ladd, for your presentation. I just have two clarifying questions. You talked about the fair housing assessment that will need to happen this year. So is that consultation contract for $150,000 for that purpose, or is there something else that you're thinking for what you listed as affordable housing planning, or someone listed as affordable housing planning?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's a great question. The assessment for fair housing is a federal requirement, so it's attached to our Community Development Block Grant entitlement funding, and the 5-year consolidated plan, which you are well familiar with, of everyone on the screen probably. So the same consultant would likely do pieces of that plan and the assessment of fair housing, because they do go together hand in hand. The market needs analysis would be done prior to the consolidated plan for the 5-year strategic plan. And the idea is that we would hire the same consultant to do that analysis that would pertain to both plans. So it may be one consultant that does all of it, or we may have two different consultants. It just kind of depends on what the capacity in that consultant world looks like.
Okay, so you're thinking the $150,000 is enough for one or potentially two contractors?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, yes, because we also like to write part of the plan ourselves. We want to be able to control and direct the goal setting process, as well as, we're pretty well, we've got good writers on staff, and we understand the services delivery landscape better than a consultant would. So we tend to take all of that narrative piece, we do ourselves.
Great. Yes, that was my concern too. Okay. And then go ahead.
Councilor Villarreal, I was just going to say that the consultants, particularly one that we've worked with in the past, who's currently working with the MFA to do the statewide plan, they are super, super helpful in pulling out the data for us and formatting it in a way that's useful. And then they'll provide some recommendations, because these numbers look like this could mean this, or it could mean that, or here's a response to this or that. So they're providing some guidance, but really they're handing us the data in a usable format, which is way better than I can do, because by the time I figure out where it is and download it, it's this insane Excel spreadsheet and I don't really understand what it means. So that's kind of where that level of expertise comes in.
Great, thank you. And then the other question I had is just to clarify, there's a bullet point that said about funding to provide affordable housing subsidies through the general fund. So, and then also through the CDBG. So we have the CDBG funding. So what exactly and how much is what's called the affordable housing subsidies?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that I agree. That's a little confusing. If I were to rewrite it, I would probably include the Affordable Housing Trust Fund connected specifically to the subsidies. However, over the past year with COVID, we did use some general funds to help pay for the admin costs of administering the subsidies, because it is a big lift for the nonprofits, as you know, to be able to do all that work to provide the assistance and get the money where it needs to go. So we use they all have their own lane, each source of funding, but there are places where they overlap, or we'll use some of the general fund to provide that administrative services programming for the subsidy piece, because our trust funds cannot be used for administrative costs or programming costs. So it's handy to have them both kind of hand in hand like that.
Okay, so I don't know if you wrote that or if Mary could explain that, because we do have one section here or a bullet point about the 3 million would be allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And then this next bullet talks about CDBG and that there would be affordable housing subsidies to the general fund. So I'm still not quite sure what that means.
Madam Chair, Councilor, I think Alex Ladd explained it best, that we use our general fund to support some of the administrative costs.
Is that the only thing then? Just administrative costs?
Madam
Chair, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. Councilor Villarreal, the general funds are used for the services programming. So the homeownership support services currently are provided by HomeWise and the Housing Trust. We'll do an RFP this spring to, because we do that every 4 years to see if there's anyone else out there who wants to provide the services. Also, the general fund is we use it for the professional contracts, which would be where the consultants would come in to provide the assessment and the data for our planning process.
Got it. Okay, thanks for the clarity. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Other questions from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move to
Move to
approve.
approve. Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal, a second from Councilor Lindell to approve the affordable housing budget that sits within the Community Development Department. If we could get a roll call, please.
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, you have a
Thank
budget.
you.
Congratulations,
Woo.
at least from this committee.
Yeah. Thank you.
On to governing body. All right, next up, I believe Director Brown is Arts and Culture. Am I correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Do you have a lead in on that one too?
I don't. I did my preamble first, and so Ms. Kamiya is next. So
Great.
Great, Madam Chair, members of the committee, councilors, thank you so much. Very pleased to be here today with a more positive outlook as city recovers, and definitely with our arts and culture community throughout, both organizations and individuals. Very pleased that our 2 vacant positions will actually be funded for next fiscal year, with the option of one that we'll look into splitting into 2 part-time, but at least there are 2 vacant positions will be filled, and that will help us carry out our scope of work and our expanded scope of work. Kudos to the team of Arts and Culture, Assistant Director Rod Lambert, and Project Specialist Armenia Tapia have all pitched in to really help us through these last 2 tough years and be a support and advocates for the Arts and Culture Department and culture throughout the city. Can I get the next slide, please? So other highlights that I'd like to bring to attention is that we did receive funds for Art in Public Places program, and that program is expansive. It's not just putting site-specific artwork or art purchases, but could do other types of workshops and hands-on things in the creation of arts and culture, which again will be used for cultural tourism and the promotion of that, as well as quality of life within the city for our residents as well as our visitors. We're also very pleased that and our commitment to our cultural investment funding program in advertising has been increased by 100,000. So each year we will be asking for an additional 100,000. Back before the pandemic, that level of funding to support arts and culture nonprofits was almost $1 million. It then in fiscal year 20 went down to 320. This current fiscal year, it's at 435. And so next fiscal year, we'll be back up to $500,000. And as our economy grows stronger, we will be able to further support those arts and culture communities and nonprofits who bring a lot of that creative economy dollars into the city. So very pleased about that. And as we're getting very excited for June, we will be reopening the gallery with an amazing show that's also in conjunction with the Terra Congress, which will be looking at adobe structures throughout northern New Mexico. So we will also be having a more active artist workforce development and professional development training. So that helps us to do that. And then the other components of what we do with arts and culture include the city historian, poet laureate, definitely Culture Connects, and the cultural tourism campaign Famous, as well as arts education and youth artworks as well. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. We're just very pleased with this budget. So thank you.
Thank you. If we can stop sharing screen, we can always come back. And I'm glad you're happy about this budget. I do remember those, that first year was pretty brutal and emotional, I think, because of what had to happen because of the revenue situation we were in. So glad that we're turning the page there. We do have a number of committee members with questions. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here today. What are the 2 new positions that are funded?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, the 2 vacant positions that have been unfunded, one was an art service coordinator, that's a title, and the other one was I believe the community gallery manager title. I'm looking to, my proposal is to change those titles to look at an art and public places program manager. And then the other part, the other full-time position to be split into 2 if possible, one to cover the cultural investment funding program, and the other one to look at our special initiatives, especially under with Chart and Culture Connects. I'm weaving those together to help with that. So those are 2 existing positions that we have that are funded, and I'm looking at the actual scope of work of what they would do.
So there are 2 new funded positions that have old titles that we're going to change into different positions?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, that is my proposal. So they are categories, a classification. So one classification is as an art service coordinator. And then the other position, which is a gallery service manager, I believe is, and I don't remember the classification or the range, salary range band that it's in.
Have we not had a gallery service manager in the past?
We did, sorry, Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, that was the former position of Assistant Manager Rod Lambert. And so Assistant Director Lambert has been doing both his duties as an Assistant Director as well as still running the gallery and professional development and some public art. So we all cross-train in everything that we do, but it's really at the point where if we can have these two positions that have been vacant and unfunded to help us fill out our team.
How long have those positions existed that they've been unfunded?
They have been unfunded since before I was here. So
Yeah.
prior to 2019, I came on board in September 2019, believe. So Mr. Lambert, Assistant Director Lambert was in that position and then was promoted up to Assistant Director. So that position probably has been vacant for 2 years. And then the Art Service Coordinator position was vacant before I even started. So prior to 2019.
I never really remember the department in the last 8 years as having more than 3 employees.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, at its height, it had actually 5 positions. And then
And
during some transition, those positions had not been filled.
Do you know how long ago it was that they had 5 positions?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, I do not off the top of my head. And I can look into that and get that to the
Yeah, if
committee.
you'd let me know that, I'd appreciate it. I'll yield for right now, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Kamiyama. Just a couple clarifying questions. There's a, let's see, you described the cultural investment funding, so thank you for explaining that. And then there is a bullet point that said 450,000 in advertising. If you could give us more details about that.
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, great question. To clarify that, the advertisement is actually the Cultural Investment Funding Program. That's what the object number in our fund is for, because Lodgers Tax supports marketing and promotion of arts and culture nonprofits to bring visitors and heighten cultural tourism within the city. So it goes under our advertising line item.
Okay, so the way this is written, it says 100,000 for the Cultural Investment Funding Program and 435,000 in advertising, but you're saying that those are actually the same funding, that's the same program?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, yes, that would be the same. So that our Cultural Investment Funding Program would have a new total for fiscal year 23 at over 500,000.
Madam Chair, if I could add to Councilor Villarreal's question, is it okay?
Sure, absolutely.
So just to add a little bit of color. So Councilor Villarreal, so the $100,000 we'd like to target for this year's Indigenous programming and the SWIA 100th anniversary. We want to make sure that this is promoted throughout the year. So that 100,000 is kind of set aside for the SWIA 100th anniversary with promotion on advertising and sponsorship. And then there's an Indigenous community focus on 2022. We want to make sure that we have a particular advertising focus on that. So that's why it's sort of split out. It's really 535, but we've just taken 100 in this bullet point and split it out for 100 for that. So
Great. Yeah, I think the way it's written in the budget book doesn't make sense, but the way you describe it sounds excellent.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then the gallery artist recovery and training was 15,000. My opinion is that's too small of an amount. And I was just curious if you had proposed a higher amount.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, thank you so much for that. For our maintenance budget, we did feel that the 15,000 in addition to what we already had would be sufficient. Again, we're trying to tie it in not only with the upcoming exhibitions, but capitalizing and leveraging workshops that we did during the pandemic. So one would be the visual recording, again, having the next level 2 for artists to practice their trade of the visual. So that's the drawings and imagery during, instead of meeting notes, it takes a place for that. So that's an example of how we would do it. We also have the photo lab that we have not launched yet, but it's ready to go. So that would be another thing that we would invite artists to learn how to use our equipment, be able to professionally document their artwork. So that helps them with their portfolios, whether it's for a gallery or for grants or arts residency. So we do feel that we can make that 15,000 and leverage that with our existing budget in the community gallery budget.
Okay, so there's already an existing amount for that program, and this is the 15,000 is adding to that.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, Councilor Viel, yes, that is correct.
Great. And then OTAB is interesting to me all the time. And I'm just curious, are you all going to be more involved with that process of distribution of funds? I mean,
Madam Chair, Councilor Viel, I am not sure. I know that is something that the tourism department does run, and they have their committee that's set up. Historically, I'm not sure if arts and culture department had a place at the table at that or not. I'm not sure.
yeah, I think, go ahead.
And then also during that time, arts and culture, the Arts Commission before it became a department was under tourism. So I'm not, there hasn't been an involvement yet with the OTAB if you're talking about the board that they have.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to have more of an understanding, and I guess I'll ask I'll ask the tourism director Randall about this further, because I think we need to evolve that process and understand it better. And I know there's a resolution or ordinance that sets it up and who's involved or who gets selected, but I'm always curious about how the selection process works. So maybe we could talk about that when he gets his turn. And I don't know if you know this, but the 100K that's added to that, is that an amount that was the typical amount, or is this an additional amount to the current budget of OTAB? And if you can't answer
Madam
that,
Chair, Counselor, we can go ahead and discuss that with the tourism department budget, but given that the lodgers tax funds both arts and culture and tourism, we can speak generally to the fact that the lodgers tax has increased since it's low during the first years of the pandemic. So that is what is fueling both the increases, as Director Brown described, for the advertising portion of the arts and culture budget, as well as the increases to the OTAB that you are referencing. But if you don't mind, if we could address the answers to those questions in the tourism department section.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, for some reason it was listed under, somewhere I read under arts and culture. So, but I'll ask that when we get to tourism. And then related to the vacant positions, I just want to reiterate that we make reclassifications all the time. In fact, some of the reclassifications in this budget didn't make sense for me in other departments. And so if we have these positions and we need to reclassify so they better fit what you all are wanting to achieve in your work and your mission, then I say go for it, because there's other reclassifications that I'm not even quite sure why we approve them in other departments, and this one actually makes sense to me. So thank you for adding more information about that, because I did have questions about the vacancies. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Pauline, for being here today. I just had a quick question about the Arts and Public Places program. You had mentioned, it's not just arts for people to look at, but also art programming, art experiences. And one of the things that I've really been wanting to focus on, and I've been seeing more of, and I would like to hear if this will continue into this fiscal year, is expanding that program and really putting some focus on the South Side to make sure there is equity in where we are placing our art and where we are having art experiences. So could you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councillor Cassett, definitely we're looking at the city wide and actually how to leverage resources and investments that the city has already done. So some of the programming, for instance, I'll use art at MRC, the Municipal Recreation Sports Complex. That provided us an opportunity because of the 2018 GRT bond then bond money has to be site specific to a capital improvement project. So we leverage that opportunity to create an art park, which is bringing it to a new audience. It's multi-generational. And instead of just leaving artwork out there, we're looking at programming. So we're asking the artists to come up with quarterly programming, whether it's them providing it themselves or say, hey, there's an animal service center right down the street. Should we have them? There's the equine therapy place. Can we have them do something? What about STEAM and STEM, adding that A into science, technology, engineering, math on site, because there is a pond out there. There is some water conservation that's happening. So ways to really connect public art to the public in different sectors. So that is some of the money that is an example of creating a rotating sculpture pads out there for exhibition, creating programming so that it becomes part of the community and there's stewardship that is grown into it, as well as bringing artwork out to the sports field and then getting them involved in creative thinking and creative problem solving. So that's just one example. Again, we're looking at youth arts education and how do we work with the amazing organizations already who do amazing things in the school, whether that's music or theater or opera. Those arts and cultural organizations are out in the schools providing instruction, hands-on experience. So there's ways to support that. And again, hands-on workshops, partnering a lot with libraries. Maria Tucker and her team has been wonderful to partner with. Again, those libraries are becoming community centers. We're looking at a new partnership with the GCCC, with Jeremy Pereira, who's looking at how do we tell the story about who Genevieve Chavez is, right? So that's something that we're looking to hopefully start this fiscal year and continue into next. And again, that's that partnerships that we have. Health and fitness, fitness court at Swan Park is another example of art. And then how do we link that together? How do we create those opportunities that are learning and ask what would the community like to see? That's the next big question that we can look at fiscal year 23, and having an additional staff person to really go deep and work with community is going to be a game changer for us. We're doing the best that we can, but we know we can always do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving some more details. It's all really exciting, and I'm really happy to see that integrated into other city departments, as well as how we are utilizing our different partners. And I do think, as you mentioned, having somebody to really focus on that will really be beneficial, and how that can be spread around. I know that something I've heard from constituents just offhand is these are all great. I really like keep the experientials going, but also, Santa Fe really is, we are an art city, but sometimes it does feel that is not reflected in all parts of our city. And so how we are able to bring, for example, the fitness court that is an art fitness court, and really bringing that over to a part of the city that traditionally has not had that focus, and how we integrate that city identity there. I think it's really wonderful, and I would very much be in favor. And I know I've heard from a lot of community members who live on the South Side that they would very much be in favor of how we start to integrate art into just the everyday scenery around Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to seeing more, especially as we get that new staff member on board and they can really dive in. And thank you so much for going into more detail about that for me. I have no other questions, as my wonderful colleagues answered or asked the other ones for me. So thank you, you two.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Oh, mute.
You're muted, Councilor.
I love starting the first part of my sentence. So I wanted to thank Director Kamiyama. When she first started, we took a drive around District 3, and she had an open mind about really art and places that it could fit. And I'm not an art person, but she is, and she's really come through with bringing art to District 3. And we mentioned a few: Swan Park, the MRC, and then recently Southside Library. So I want to thank you wholeheartedly from myself and my constituents who appreciate it. And I know, we had a good turnout at the Southside Library with some of the students from Cesar Chavez Elementary, and it's great to see artwork coming to the South Side. So thank you for living up to your word and for being a person of your word and bringing art to the South Side. So I do appreciate that. My question was for funding for the City Historian, Poet Laureate, Culture Connects, and the Famous program. It just says funding, and maybe you answered this earlier and I missed it, but clearly there has to be a number tied with those. I'm just curious approximately what that number was.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, and thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to work with you and an honor. And this, if you haven't been to the Southside Library to see Hernan Gomez Chavez sculpture, I encourage you because it's pretty fantastic. So that's the plug on that one. So our maintenance budget does cover the city historian, the poet laureate, and the other things. And I'm trying to find my number on my printout, which will be approximately, I think that is about $90,000 total. So I'm combining a couple of, no, it's about 70. About 150 if we look at it in total, and that covers all the other scope of work that we do.
Right, and then I read recently about a youth poet laureate. Is that part of the city program as well?
That used to, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that used to be under Arts and Culture Department, and then that with the Winter Foundation, that transitioned to the library. So the youth poet laureate is run and funded completely out of that foundation, and they partnered with the library and with the youth programs there to do that. But we still manage and work with the city's poet laureate, who is Darrell Wellington.
Very good. That's all I had, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Director Kamiyama.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the city's poet laureate is an adult, not a youth, correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Yeah. Councilwoman Cassett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow up on that to make sure I understood correctly. So the youth poet laureate, are they funded by the Friends of the Library or the city's library budget?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, they are actually, as I understood, funded at the Winter Foundation. You submit for a grant. So we also submitted for a grant to fund the poet laureate. But they have funded the Youth Poet Laureate program in full. And this are out of the Arts and Culture Department, we are fully funding the Adult Poet Laureate, but we are seeking additional grant funding from them to expand the project scope of work that the Poet Laureate can do.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate it.
I thought I hit it. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Does the department apply for grants outside of city funding?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, yes, we do. We currently receive on an ongoing basis, we're very fortunate, Assistant Director Lambert writes the grants for New Mexico Arts, and we do receive an award usually yearly to help support a program or a project through the community gallery. There are other grant opportunities that we partner with other nonprofit organizations, but they sometimes are the lead and we provide letters of support. So again, we're always looking, we will begin to look now when we have staff for additional opportunities for grant funding, but we are also very aware to not be in competition with our arts and culture nonprofits, but rather the way to think about it is how to be intentional about certain grants. So like New Mexico, the National Endowment for the Arts, Little Globe, and other folks have, and Santa Fe Arts Institute submitted for a grant, but we're a partner on it to look at neighborhood fiestas. And if that's funded, that will be a partnership amongst many different arts organizations. So yes, we do go after grants, but more than often we are partners in grants through letters of support.
So it doesn't really show up in the budget?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, at this moment, the one that shows up consistently is the New Mexico Arts Grant. But again, hopefully in next fiscal year and going on, we will be able to go after more grant funding from a multiple, not just the National Endowment for the Arts, but some of the other funders. We're also looking at a Monument Lab and the Mellon Foundation in support of monuments and markers, looking at potentially recommendations that come forth through the community center process, and to ensure that those conversations and those actions have funding in which to carry those forward.
Okay, thank you. I think that that would be really some worthwhile pursuit. I appreciate this, and just be sure to get back to me and refresh my memory as to when we did have 5 people working in the arts department. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Other discussion, or do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal, a second from Counselor Cassett to approve the arts and culture budget. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lind,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We are moving on now to the economic development budget. And back to you, I believe, Director Brown, yeah?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Thank you. So in the first page of the economic development description of services, what's missing is sort of the organization, just so everyone knows. ED is comprised of the economic development planning and growth team. It's comprised of asset management. It's comprised of the Midtown redevelopment team and also business licensing. So as you see the recommended number of 12, that's the numbers we have, and we have 4 vacancies that are unfunded right now. And out of that 12, one of the jobs is being reclassified to bring in a new economic development director. So I'm very excited about that. I can build some capacity to the work I do, and I'm right now carrying 2 hats. So if we move to the next slide where the highlights are, on top of all of the work we do with entrepreneurship and workforce development, et cetera, these are some of the highlights for our budget. The $250,000 to Midtown really relates to the fact that we applied for capital outlay and it was approved, but we won't get it for a while. And so I need some carryover money because we're also trying to fund the additional public engagement. We're looking to get a public engagement liaison and some small grants for things they'll be doing while we're doing land development, and also some of the work that the capital outlay will pay for with land economics and rezoning. So that's what the $250,000 is for. And then the 150 is for the economic development strategic plan. We've completed a framework, and now we want to get to the actual plan. We haven't had one in a while, so this additional funding will be helping for that. And then the 50,000 for community development is that there is no specific budget for community development. So I am draining the economic development budget to do community development. So I'm on fumes right now in this fiscal year, but this 50,000 will help with a growth management plan for community development as a macro level for the whole department. The 733,000 for funding of Lita projects. I think somewhere in our budget document, it talks about the different Lita programs we're working on. Right now, we have 2 in the pipeline that are going through committee review as we speak. And then we have a number coming through over the next year that we're very excited about. That's going to provide what I call that diversity of the economy, to diversify it. And so this additional funding will be helpful for us. The 630,000 is just to support business development and job training. These are helpful for the stimulating of the economy that I've been working on. It's outside of what ARPA can do because ARPA is very specific in the eligibility of things you can do. So this is to help support some of the work that we've been doing this year, and now we can continue it on in the fiscal year coming. One other note that I wanted to make out is that in that spreadsheet below, it says there's a $1.2 million proposed budget from $61,000 in the previous year. And that jump of 1,913% is really because the Economic Development Department has an enterprise fund, but we haven't been able to take in any money to support the work that we're doing to stimulate the economy and work through all the pieces and initiatives we have. So this is coming from the general fund to help support us as we make it through the year in some of the activities that we're planning to do. So it looks like I've won the lottery, but it really is to support the work that we're trying to do in economic development going forward as we come out of the economic and pandemic recession. So with that, that's my overview. And if you have any questions, I stand for answers provided.
Thank you. If we can stop sharing the screen again. Terrific. Questions from the committee? Councilwoman Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rich. I'm happy to see the Economic Development Director position being filled. That's been a theme that both Councilwoman Vittareal and I have mentioned many times throughout the year of our concern of these multiple positions, and I know that you are doing a lot, so I'm very happy to hear that. I'm going to give a quick apology to everybody real fast. My brain is still being COVID-y. And so if I miss something and I re-ask things, I'm discovering that I'm not holding on to information as much as I normally do. So just an apology in case you already covered this. What are the other 3 positions that are going in for those vacant positions?
So we have 2 economic development specialist positions that are open. We recently lost one, and we've been trying to build that capacity. I'm actually having an issue with the funding, not getting qualified candidates at the hourly rate that we're offering. So I'm going out again to see if we can do some work. I'm also going to use some of my funding to bring in some summer interns to support us this summer. So I'll use some of my vacancy savings now, but as we go into the fiscal year, we're going to have some temporary high school students. We had 2 before, and they're all very successful now. But some of that will help me just as I try to find the right candidates to fill in the specialist roles. The other role that I'm trying to fill in is the asset development associate under the asset development program. We've actually tried 3 times to advertise that position, and we have not been getting qualified candidates. So we are moving forward, trying to make that all work. But those are the 3 areas that we're trying to fill in to build the capacity. As we know, the ARPA grant is coming through, and I need to make sure I have qualified candidates who can help me sort of put those into action.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's, I think, really important information for us to have. I know I missed the HR budget, but this has been one of my concerns and one of my desires as we look at class and compensation of looking at some of these positions that we're having a hard time filling and what the market rate is for them at this time. So we'll talk about that in HR, but thanks for that information. I think that that's really important for us to have to look at where we are having a hard time filling positions because of not getting qualified candidates, and how we both look at salary as well as other solutions that we might be able to pursue in order to fill those. You had mentioned that we can get a list of the Lita projects. Can you let me know where that is?
Yes, I think it was under budget book, but I will. Some, as you may notice, are under kind of aliases because they don't want to publicly let you know that they're looking at capital expansion. But I can get you a Lita list, and I will share that actually through EDAC too. But
okay, that'd be great. Yeah, I saw some of that. There are some listed. I just didn't know if there were others that were not listed within the budget books.
There are others under code names. So
okay. Great. All right. I look forward to seeing those. And then can you give me a little bit more information about what goes into a community development growth management plan? You know, we have this economic development strategic plan. We have a number of conversations that we'll be having regarding land use planning. So what would be separate in a community development growth management plan, as well as how are those plans integrated into this?
Right. Thank you for that question. So I would say, I'll start with the fact that I'm trying to measure the essential elements of a healthy city. There are 16 elements here. And so the community development growth piece is taking all of the elements of all the departments: tourism, arts and culture, land use, economic development, and housing. How do we blend those in to build a synergy that says these all help us, plus other departments, in the essential elements? How do we measure success as a city? We are now in a new economy and a new normal where we're competing with other cities for capacity, for resources, for other companies coming and going, et cetera. So I want to use that demand to sort of figure out how do we measure that data. Additionally, I want to make sure that you'll get to Director Kluk's department. He's going to talk about the neighborhood development. and neighborhood resources. And so this community development plan will also look at the quality of life aspect of that. It's not just the land use. It's not just the economic mobility. It's about the quality of life too. So that's a part of what we'd like to measure. And then looking at how we take the concept of diversifying our economy. And we don't necessarily just want to diversify our economy. We want to make sure that it's shared across the whole neighborhoods. We want to share it across the whole city. Some places it's good to diversify it, right? How did the housing, how did the walkability, et cetera, come into play? So that's a part of what this community development plan would be about, is a larger picture around the work we do in those different departments, in a bigger picture around basically quality of life and the essential elements of a healthy city.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rich. And just to add some color to that for my colleagues in EDAC, this is something that we also will be focusing on. I didn't realize that this was related to that, but very excited to see that, that is something that will also be filtering through EDAC and having some of those broader conversations. So glad to hear that there's some funding that's going to be able to back that as we move forward. It does not look like I have any other questions for economic development. So thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If we could just pause, and Councillor Cassett, if you could tell us all what EDAC is, in case we have people listening who might not be familiar with that acronym and the important work that goes on there. I think it would be an opportune moment for you.
Yes, absolutely. The EDAC is our Economic Development Advisory Committee. I took over as the chair in January. And this is a citizen committee of volunteers, of individuals who are business owners, have some type of specialty or knowledge in economic development, to really talk about how we support the economy of Santa Fe, how we look to grow. When there's what's wonderful about this group, there really is a large lens on diversification of the economy, as Rich had mentioned, but also really a big focus on equity and looking at some of the related social, public health, quality of life challenges and how those integrate into economic development and how we can look to solve those. So fun committee, if anybody wants to pop in, as all our meetings are, they're public. So thank you.
Okay. And, I probably should have flagged the CDC committee that Councilwoman Villarreal chairs. So my bad. Maybe I see your hand up for questions. Maybe you can tell us all about that when we get to questions, and we can just sort of refer back to the affordable housing budget. Councilor Rivera, your hand is up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Councilwoman Cassett has COVID to fall back on for her memory issues. I guess I'll have to fall back on age, because I can't fall back on COVID. So, Rich, I don't know if I think I heard you talk about this, but you said you were looking to reclassify one position.
Yes.
Just talk about that again, and let me know which fund you're looking, or which position you're looking at reclassifying.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera. Yes, so we're reclassifying for now. Right now, we're going to reclassify our broadband architect that we had in FY22. We're going to reclassify that and turn that into our economic development director position. And I just think that the director position is the priority for me right now. As the broadband I was working on, it gets ramped up, and it won't be until September, October. So I'm hopeful that in our next round of possible supplemental funding, I could bring that broadband architect position back online. But that's what we're reclassifying to get to the economic development director position.
All right. So I'm looking at the position listings that I think Mary McCoy sent out. I think it was Mary. And there's no broadband position on there, and there's already an economic development division director.
She might have switched it already, Councilor Rivera. She might have already changed it.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, that is correct. It is the same position number. It is a non-union position that we are using will be using to reclassify for fiscal year 23. What is included in the economic development budget is the salaries and the benefits associated with the salary at the level, at the range appropriate for the economic development director.
Okay. And then with the associate or the asset development associate, when I look at the position listing, it says that it's filled. Was it filled at some point and then something happened?
Yes, we had a candidate, but they dropped out.
Okay.
So we're now we're in the second round. We just did a round of interviews. We're hoping to close it, but it has been that person backed out after we
Okay.
filled the paperwork.
All right, that was it. Just a couple follow-up questions to some comments that you had made. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Councilwoman Villarreal, I think you should definitely tell us about your work as chair of the CDC. Should have done that under the affordable housing budget. And I think for people listening, it's another acronym we kick around and people may not know exactly what it is and does.
Yep, I'll do that after I ask my questions because I'm on
Okay.
my trajectory here. Did you say, Director Brown, that we haven't posted the economic development director because you were reclassifying it?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's correct. We have not posted it because it has been approved yet, because we're actually reclassifying that position. So there's a different salary range, et cetera, but
Okay.
I'd like to post it as soon as possible, but it has
So-
not been.
Is the reclassifying aspect just the salary change? Because we did have an economic development director in the past. So what aspect is reclassified?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think I took the position for the economic development director when I moved up to community development director. So I think that was reclassified. And now we're bringing in a role back again for division director for economic development.
Okay. So you took that and bumped it up to be the
Mhm.
director of,
So I'm wearing the two hats from
yeah,
that standpoint, but
okay. And, all right, thank you. And then for Lita Funding, some of those that were listed in the budget book are ones that we've already funded.
That's
So are you saying that some of them are asking for more funding sources through Lita with revised contracts or
yeah.
different
good question.
projects?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, no, some of the funding is coming from the state, so it comes from the state into our budget. But we have to maintain the funding every year for them because it's a quarterly, sometimes a half year, but quarterly review of their LIDA measurements. And so that's why it's listed. But there are many more that are not listed because they're, as I said, they're under confidence as a project name. But the ones you have listed that are currently in process are because the state sends us grant funding because we're the fiscal agent for some of those programs, and it comes into our budget. So it's sort of a line item that comes from one revenue area into an expense side, and that we disperse ourselves.
Great, okay. And then the other question I had about Lita, I thought a portion of that or all of it came from an economic development, like a GRT percentage ordinance.
That, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, you're actually correct. We do have an economic development fund we get from GRT or we get from land sales. And as you may know, we have not made any land sales in recently. And the leases that we have, it does not support some of the work that we've been doing over the year because we were facing a recession. And so I've just been using the current budget to make our way. And I'm about on fumes now, but this is to supplement us to keep that going. So some money's coming from the general fund into our 212 fund to sort of put into advertising and consulting, et cetera.
Got it. And so is that right, Director McCoy? There is a percentage of GRT that does go into that fund that Director Brown was referencing?
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes, that is correct.
What was the percentage again? An eighth of?
Madam Chair, Counselor, I believe Andy Hopkins has that detail if Andy is on.
Madam Chair.
Brad, hi Brad. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's 1% of the state share.
1% of
State share GRT.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. So Director Brown, what you said, you went really fast. I'm like retouching
sorry.
back on some of
I'm an East
the
Coaster.
I don't write that fast. The Midtown redevelopment projects, the 250,000, we have
Yes.
state funding, but this is to hold us in
Yes.
place until we get that funding. And then
Yes.
part of that money was to fund a public outreach liaison, or what did you call it?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Council Villarreal. So part of that money will help us. As you know, our public engagement contract is now done, and we want to continue some of the local public engagement we have with these community organizations. So some of that funding will help me because I don't have it specifically targeted. And so as we go into the next fiscal year, this is going to be helpful for any mini grants we have, because we're now into the land development stage. So I want to make sure that we are still aligning public engagement that's fresh and new and relevant for what we're doing. So that's a part of that money is coming from.
Great. Okay. And that's in the form of contracts?
Yeah,
Okay.
small contract, a little grant here, or we might have a liaison person that we pay for a
Yep.
couple months just to get us through.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think that was a great plan, and I hope we continue in that vein, and even some of those amounts could be increased for the amount of work they take from
Yeah.
community engagement partners. So, and then you talked about the economic development strategic plan. When I read that, you were referencing Midtown specifically, the next phase, or not?
No, strategic plan is economic development on a whole.
Got it.
So the
Okay.
last fiscal year, Madam Chair and Council Villarreal, the last fiscal year we have a framework around the work we do and what we need for strategy moving into the next 5 to 10 years. And we have an older plan. So we're trying to update that plan, and we'll work in conjunction with all the other departments, but we want to specifically look at, workforce development, entrepreneurship, small business resiliency, and recruitment and expansion. So this is what that plan is going to be about, that extra funding. So
it's building upon the current Angelou plan.
that's correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair, Council Brewer. Yes.
Got it. All right. And then, did you say 50,000 was community development growth management plan?
It's 50,000. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a framework that I'm building, not a full strategic plan.
Framework that would actually tie into what's happening in land use, so they're actually connected.
Everything.
I mean,
will-
you explained it, but I'm just curious, like, is it, I guess, a different contract completely than what land use is doing for their growth management plan?
Madam Chair, Council Villarreal, it'll all align together. It's just that we have 5 departments and we don't really have one bigger framework. Land use separates, and it's the front line of the growth of the city. But on the community development side, there's quality of life issues, right? There's economic mobility issues. There are how do you become a healthy city, and how do you measure that? We have our data platform. So that's what this framework plan is really all about, is like, let's identify those key indicators that we should be measuring on a whole as we move forward with the city. So whatever comes out of the land development plan, the growth management plan, will be informed or not inform some of what this community development plan will be also. So it'll get
Great.
connected together.
Got it. I guess I was just curious why it was a separate pot of money versus the whole thing with different focus areas of the growth management plan. But you know best about that. Yeah. Let's see. I think that's it. The Community Development Commission is also a community committee. I don't call it citizen committee because someone corrected me once saying if someone's not documented, don't call them that. So, and it's made up of, there's a total of 7 of us, and it's such a great mix of folks with different backgrounds, but essentially we're charged with allocating and making grant recommendations with the CDBG funding that we get through HUD and the funding that's allocated to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We're also looking at, we've been doing study sessions at the request of members of different topics that they deem important related to affordable housing, or just in general, like how development works and what's the cost of development for developers, the things that we don't necessarily learn as community members, even counselors at times. So I think that those study sessions have been very informative, and we've actually been doing site visits to see some of the locations where funding has been allocated through our funding sources and what those either housing developments look like, or we've even toured I didn't get to go, but the Santa Fe Suites, and then new service providers that we also fund through different allocations. We went to visit some of those. So we're trying to expand that, and then maybe even have some recommendations that come out of the CDC group, so that that would be actually given to policymakers like us. So we're kind of expanding not expanding the reach, but looking at it more holistically instead of just being that transactional piece of making grant decisions. And it's good because we actually have more funding, so we have more cycles to review. So there's more requirements to meet instead of just certain years or certain time of year where we actually do one grant cycle. So exciting work.
Yeah.
That's
Madam
great.
Chair, if I could, Madam Chair, I wanted to.
Yeah, and yes, hold on, just one quick second, Rich. And those study sessions, are they recorded? Is that something?
Yes.
Are they on the website or somewhere?
All meetings are recorded. They should be on the website. That's what
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they upload them to there. If you don't find them, please let Alex know, because we've
Okay.
been assuming they're all being uploaded to that. So
Okay, great. That's great to know about them. Now to you, Director Brown.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
No
I
worries.
just wanted to say to Councilor Villarreal that we will be coming to the Community Development Committee to talk about this community development plan, and also these essential elements of a healthy city and the data platform, which is a part of the community. We want data to be shared not only with our policymakers, but with our community too. So we will be connecting more over the next fiscal year.
excellent. You reminded me of something too. There were actually members that were really interested in being part of the growth management plan when you involve community members. So there were interested members and wanted to know more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and as long as we're doing a little tutorial on some of these other entities that are part of the city's work, and sorry, Councilor Lindell, I'm going to you next, I promise. Director Brown, can you just tell people who might be listening about the Angelou Plan, which is what, 25 years
It's
ago?
the 2006, so it's nearly 22 years old. I guess.
22. Yeah, so maybe just speak to that really quickly.
16 years old.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that question. So for the public and our policymakers, the Angelou Plan is the original strategic plan for economic development that was completed. It was a two-year plan, two-year process that involved creating a framework around goals and accomplishments. And then there was public engagement, and there was data gathering to understand kind of what are the key elements of economic development for the city moving forward. And it was supposed to be kind of a 20-year plan. And we are now, in a new century and a new era because of COVID. And so we are trying to augment what the Angelou Plan does around workforce development, around entrepreneurship, around industry diversification, around quality of life, around economic mobility. Some of these words and some of these ideas were not even thought of back then when the Angelou Plan was being put into place. So that's where we're sort of starting as our baseline, and then augmenting from there with this new plan we're trying to build.
Thank you. Appreciate that background. All right. Councilor Lindell has been patiently waiting. Thank you. It's your turn.
I've been patiently daydreaming. Rich, just a couple of questions on the numbers. Mr. Brown, you've got a very sizable increase in contracts, almost 800,000. Just give us some idea of what some of the sizable contracts are that we're looking at.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, that's a very good question. Keep in mind that the sizable contract number is a little deceptive, because some of that money is coming from the state, both for our current LITA projects, but also because if we do close a LITA program in August or September, the state money will come to us and it'll come to our budget. So we're just labeling it there so that we know that it's in our expense line when it comes to the state money revenue. So right now we have 2 LITA projects currently in play, and probably by the next January, we hope to have 3 more. And for instance, we are estimating that the state may send to us about $500,000 in matching funding that we will be the fiscal agent for. So when you see that number, it looks super huge, but it's mainly because we are going to expect an influx of money from our grant from the state that'll make that number happen. We have to disperse that money. So that's why it gets to the expense side.
I appreciate that, Mr. Brown, and I think it's important for people to understand how those LITA monies work, that those aren't coming directly out of us.
No.
I think it's really important for people to understand that we are not putting general fund money into these businesses, that this economic development money is basically from the state. It's I just think that's an important point to make.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I agree. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Madam Chair, I forgot to ask one question. Director Brown, you said that the budget book doesn't describe what's then under the economic development. You said asset management, Midtown, business. You went fast. So can you say the business permit?
Yes, I'll repeat it. So the department is made up of 4 different groups besides the director. And so the first one is the economic development group that's planning and growth. Right, business growth manager, 2 other asset development specialists. Then we have asset management. Right now we have an asset management manager, and we're looking for fill that asset associate. We have Midtown redevelopment. Currently we have contractors, but we do have a rezoning and asset management person who's new, Lee Loxon. And then business licensing. And business licensing is under economic development, and there are 2 people there in that department.
Thank you. I had that. I just want to make sure I wrote that down correctly.
Sure.
Thanks for that. That's all.
Sure.
Okay, other questions, or do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from
Second.
Counselor Cassett, a second from Councilwoman Villarreal. Is there further discussion? Don't see any hands. Can we get a vote? Roll call, please.
Yes, Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes. All right. Congratulations, Director Brown. You're on your way. Off we go now to planning and land use, and we have our new land use director with us.
Hi there, Madam Chair, Councilors. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be here with you today in this new capacity, I have to say first. I'd also like to thank the governing body and the mayor and all the departments we work with for all their help and encouragement, especially over the last 9 or 10 months when I was working as the interim director. I'd also like to really thank our tenacious and enduring land use team that I'm very happy to be leading. I feel like they've done a phenomenal job, well before I was on board, but I've really, enjoyed working with them and building our team. I'm also really honored to have our leader, Rich Brown, who I really appreciate, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for taking on the role as community development director. And then, I'd also like to thank our previous land use directors for their guidance and good works to build and support the department and everything I've learned from them to position me where I am today. So today we have with us in the wings Amanda Insenius. She's our admin manager, and she's definitely been indispensable in putting together this budget for us and did most of the hard work. I've opted to go ahead and cover for everybody else. All of our managers, they're extremely busy, so hopefully I can field any questions for the divisions if there are any specific questions. And Eric Ani can also be available for questions for the MPO. Of course, they are part of land use, but that's definitely the weakest link for me as far as a subject matter expert. So Eric can be here to answer any of those questions. So just a little bit about planning and land use. So the Planning and Land Use Department provides expert land use guidance, supporting our community's desired planning and land use development goals. We achieve this by serving the public with integrity and honesty, solving problems through teamwork and creativity, accepting responsibility and accountability, and promoting equity and inclusion. That's our mission. We have 6 divisions, including planning, historic preservation, metropolitan planning organization, building permitting, inspections and enforcement, and engineering and technical review. We also have an administrative wing with our administrative manager, a project administrator, and real estate manager making up the administrative staff. So I'd like to go over quickly some highlights and statistics for you all. So just to give some perspective on the magnitude of our work, like Director Brown had mentioned earlier, I'd like to start with some statistics on permits and development. So just to go a little ways back, 2020, we had 513 multifamily units approved and out for construction permitted, 304 single family homes for a total of 817. That was for calendar year 2020. And then in 21, we saw a slight decrease, but not by much. So 500 multifamily housing units permitted, 240 single family houses for a total of 740 housing units permitted. Also in 2020, we had a grand total of 5,178 permits and for a total of fees paid of 5.5 million. And then in 2021, we were above that 5,000, almost 6,000 permits issued for a total of 6.8 million. So definitely, still on an upward trajectory. I'd like to note that with our new fee structure, the revenues for land use activities have increased about $400,000 over the last calendar year since they were implemented in January of 2021, and that doesn't include impact fees. So that's a separate category, just for land use activities. And then coincidentally, and I think favorably, this is very close to the requested overall increase to our budget and positions us well to justify this current request. So a couple more highlights, or a few more highlights if you don't mind. So we're definitely continuing to focus intently on building a long-term capacity and stability and level of expertise within the department. And with that in mind, we've really continued to work at increasing staffing, hiring vacant positions in vital areas of operations, and are working to increase our capacity specifically for strategic planning efforts, and also the corollary of the needed staffing and development on the permitting side and inspections after those developments are approved. One thing of note that's really exciting, we've just recently got the Planning Commission back up to 9 members. So we're fully staffed at capacity there, and that'll really position us well to take on these big important tasks that we have in front of us. Let's see. We're currently moving forward with the Chapter 14 land development code updates. We've had an RFP out for that, and we're in contract negotiations with the leading offerer. Also, we're, along with building capacity, we're also planning to quickly get underway with the comp plan and update to the green building code. I know you all have some questions about that. I think I'm prepared to answer those. Yeah, and then we're also, another big item is we're poised to continue the implementation and expansion of InterGov functionality, including the CSS portal for all permitting and digitization of operations with permitting operations with e-review, and also planning operations, by the way. I'm working with IT on that, and I hope to have that projectized and underway by the end of the year, if not halfway completed. And then expanding the training for leadership, technical proficiency, required certifications and CEUs. We got a little bit behind on that during COVID, but we want to work on building that this year. So that's department highlights. A little bit on staffing, just to remind you about the mid-year. So we did request the inspection salary adjustment, and that really was beneficial. So we went from around 60% vacancy in the middle of last year to 14% currently, which means we're missing 2 positions in inspections. So I think that was a critical and enormous help to relieve the compaction and both help with, retention and bringing on qualified inspectors. Then we also got the assistant director for planning approved and the senior planner for historic preservation and the engineer. So related to those, we have candidates for both the AD positions in planning and development. Those have been selected and approved by the CM, and we're just working on processing. So I'm super excited about that, and they should be on board in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We also hired a new planning manager, Maggie Moore. She's starting next Monday. She's coming from the county. I think she'll be a huge asset to the planning division. Really excited about having her on board. Then if you all have any questions about our unfilled vacancies or positions, I'm definitely prepared to go through that. I can share my screen with our org chart if needed. We definitely are struggling with some of these positions that are, quote unquote unicorns, that are, very specialized positions that are hard to fill and are very competitive in the market. But we are at a 23% vacancy rate, which is, much better than it was even half a year ago. So then just a little bit about the budget. I don't want to talk too much because I know you all have lots of questions about each one of these, but I just want to give the highlights. So on the salary increases, we're really happy to see those increases, and I think it will help us become more competitive and optimize our position to ensure retention and increase productivity and morale. And we definitely want to ask for more positions in the mid-year. That's the very short story on that. The $300K for the Chapter 14 and growth management comp plan, growth policy. I think we need to come to terms on the names of those things. Anyway, the 300 that we asked for last year, I think it was 320 that Eli had asked for. I just want to clarify that it's on this list, but it's actually part of our maintenance budget. So we're asking for that as a quote unquote rollover. And we just didn't have the capacity to get to those things last year, but we're definitely rolling on them this year. And so we did have to use a little bit of that money just to stay afloat. And so that's the 41K that you see there that was used for things like engineering division, inspections, trainings. These are all contracts things, historic preservation, case management support, traffic engineering support with DRT, stenography services, needed computer hardware and software, and then strategic small remodeling of the office just so that we can still be in City Hall and function. So we did have to pull a little bit of that funding last year just to make those operational items happen. I'm excited about the $250K for the neighborhood-based planning and the $100K for downtown planning. So I feel like those will be rolled into the general comp plan initiative. And to Councilor Villarreal's point and Rich Brown, I believe with the general plan definitely has these categories that I think we still want to capture, but in a more kind of holistic way. But anyway, they're definitely categorized, and they don't just involve land use. So I think it is fair to disperse that funding, even though it may end up into one comp plan in 3 to 5 years. So anyway, back to those neighborhood plans. So these are for planning initiatives that will assess and work to integrate the opportunities and needed support structures to increase the general prosperity and functionality of these zones and areas. These buckets will be a part of the larger initiative, as I mentioned, and will really help us to understand and respond to the needs of the council districts and the downtown, and help us find these placemaking opportunities, and initiatives and, places for where we can put efforts to revitalize those zones, and discover all these nexuses and interdependencies that we kind of, know conceptually in our minds that are there, but really, categorize those and collect data around them and understand, what people really want and need to, make Santa Fe more livable and friendly for everyone. And I think it'll also aid in refinement of our approach to accessible and sustainable, townscapes and neighborhood conservation, which is already in the code, but I think we need to build on it. And, I think those aspects can really go a long way to enhance the general quality of life. And just, one example is, this push for outdoor dining, which I think it was really a blessing in disguise with COVID, allowing that to flourish. And I think it's a really great thing that we want to keep. And so, part of this assessment could be, for example, coming up with an outdoor dining ordinance. That's just one small example. And so then the on-calls for 240K, these are, in a nutshell, these are really just to help support the different divisions with on-call consulting services that they need to, provide the support for these teams, and especially in the development approval process, infrastructure development review, inspections, training, archaeological consulting, planning consulting, things like that. We're really working on developing the department, but we've, due to COVID, we're not in a great position staffing wise, and we are having trouble, building the department on some level with some of these critical positions. So these contracts are really just to help us shore that up, and are, an interim measure until we can get, permanent staff on board to take on that workload. The mini CRM for 75K, I don't know if we'll get that this year, but I wanted to ask for it because we did hire this, or we hired, but we got kind of in building division, we're trying to hire in at the permit tech level, and we've had people that are really qualified that have climbed the ladder pretty quickly, and that's a good thing. But what it does is it leaves a vacuum at the permit tech level where we need this traffic cop that we've been talking about. I think that person will really be essential to helping us channelize and manage communications. This very large amount of external, incoming communications that we always need to manage and stay on top of, so that people understand that we are there and being responsive. I think that's one thing that we really struggle with. We get all these communications, but it's very hard to respond to them in a timely fashion. So really developing a position and the supported digital technology that we need to channelize those communications and make our responsiveness more effective. And just our customer service to the community better. The plat room for 60K, we have all the old permits and microfiche in the plat room that need to be digitized, and that's been a sorely needed. We've needed to do that for a long time. I think it's just reaching a critical point because that room is just not big enough. So we need to get everything scanned and then work on. And then now whenever new plans come in, we scan those automatically. And they go into they're digitized automatically. But we have a big, a huge backlog from years that just needs to be scanned. The SRT data, STR data, that's in the maintenance budget as well. And that's short-term rental data collection. I think some counselors might have questions on that. We do need that to keep track of the short-term rentals that are coming in, because there are more than a few that are not permitted, and that's how we catch them and just make sure that they stay in compliance, that they're inspected for life safety issues before they open up, things like that. And then I think I've addressed everything except the training for staff. Basically, I've asked to double our training budget, just in an effort to push to further professionalize the department, give people that opportunity for professional development, and also to maintain the required current, the certificates and CEUs that are required to really, support the department and fulfill the required land use activities and approvals. And we suffered a little bit from COVID, just with these a lot of these opportunities just not being available. So we have some catch up to do. So that's in a nutshell, that's why I asked for that budget. Sorry to be a little bit long-winded, but I did want to just give you all that cursory overview, and I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can stop sharing the screen, that'll help me. And I think, you know, your presentation and going into detail was a good thing. I know we're going to dive probably even deeper. This is a very important department and doing really important work that the community is very interested in. So, and I agree, I think there are probably some questions around this growth management / code update / general plan update, and we probably need to, you know, dive into that a little bit. So I will, we've got hands up from the committee. We'll start with the committee members and then maybe I'll follow up. So Councillor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Director Klug, for your presentation and your work. That you guys have a lot going on. So since we are on the topic, let's go ahead and jump into all of the different titles and names of our planning efforts. We know that there's been a lot of conversation about the need for a comprehensive plan update. We have a lot of different budget items that are listed out here. Can you talk to us a bit about what we are funding and if there is anything that is not included in what we would need to do in a comp plan update?
Sure. So thank you, Councillor, Madam Chair, Councillors, Councillor Cassett. So just a minute here. So I do have thorough notes on this.
You were prepared. You knew it was
Yeah,
coming.
well, and I, you know, that, and my head is just full of operations stuff, right? So it's just like I have to keep notes on these initiatives. Anyway, so first of all, so what we're doing, I just want to start with what we're doing right now. So we will need around 150K for the first section of the Chapter 14 update, which strategically we decided to do first. We obviously need to roll in and have the growth management plan or growth optimization plan, comp plan. I'll talk about that in a minute because I think they're all the same thing. And it's really how we want to talk about them and how we decide what we want at the end of the day, actually, you know, what we want that document to look like and how we want it to function. Anyway, so for Chapter 14, we have a RFP that was issued for 3 phases. Phase 1A and 1B are funded currently. And the Phase 1A will basically be a diagnostic review, code hygiene, and technical corrections. So this will include identifying inconsistencies, you know, circular and unclear references, conflicts, and areas of needed simplification, clarification, coordination, or explanation, that kind of thing, just to make the code easier to read. And also probably adding or modifying a lot of the information so that it's more graphically oriented, so it's also easier to read in that way. And then identifying, classify missing or needed improvements and modifications to the conditions, best practices, interpretations, and just needed streamlining and standardization. So there are, you know, lots of models out there that these, you know, consultants that have proposed have shown, and I think we've picked a good, I can't disclose it now, but I think we've picked we're on the way to picking a good consultant to recommend for approval to you all, who has a lot of experience doing these things. So yeah, so the first phase is really just cleanup. And then after that, it's to develop and support implementation of strategies and plans to promulgate the Phase 1 work, finding technical corrections, clarifications, and simplification, and key requirements involved to create a more rational and user-friendly land use development code. So at the end of the day, with that tranche of money, we will really just have a land use code that is hopefully simplified and clearer to read, but may not have a lot of structural changes. The phase 2 will be those structural changes where we want to make strategic recommendations to promote key standards and amendments to the land use development code that achieve city planning and development priorities. And then, undertake a comprehensive code standard update process with the relevant land use divisions, partner departments, community development representatives, et cetera, just to make sure that we are covering, and listening, having focus groups and inviting, stakeholders, yourselves included, obviously, to kind of attack the structural issues that people feel like we have with the code. One in particular is the development plan process, right? It's very thorough, and it's also very expensive. And one of the main goals of Chapter 14, it's stated right in the very beginning, is to promote economy and efficiency in the development process. I would add, public good, but that's not in the code. So, I think we need to take that to heart. And I think you read that first part of the code and you're like, oh, great. And then you start getting into it. It's like one of the planners likes to say, it's like an onion. Once you start to peel it, it makes you cry. It's like an onion. Once you start to, peel it and uncover and see how complex it is. Anyway, I think there's a lot of simplifications in there that we could work on, and we're actually already working on in the background, but we want to do it, in priority order. And so that we're attacking things in an order that makes sense. So that'll be phase 2. And then phase 3 will be to integrate this growth policy initiative that will be happening in tandem with the code. Once we know what that is and what we want it to do, we have to codify it. So that'll be phase 3. And so, we'll definitely need that 300, 350 to achieve that. And then, so the growth management plan, I think we can also, we can use some of that 300 in tandem with that, and then the 250 and the 100 that were added for these other initiatives. I think that will cover us for this 3 to 5 year growth management plan. And obviously we'll have to come back and ask for the remainder that we haven't spent in the previous year. But, I think we're doing is proposing a 20-year comprehensive plan that's really informed by the successes of the current general plan. And because I think the current general plan is, it is technically outdated, but it's also, a fantastic moral document, and I think has been a really good guide over the last 20 years. It didn't have the specificity that it probably should have had around the initiatives. And so I think the new comp plan should have an emphasis on a dynamic growth policy that highlights the creation and optimization of opportunities for the development of community resources and access to them, and helping to create a sense of placemaking and belonging. And this includes optimization of our known resources, land, water, people, culture, our unique places, and sense of place here, economic potential, and inclusion of all the things that we haven't thought of yet that these stakeholders will come to the table with and make Santa Fe the place we want it to be. And so, but in the end, this document really needs to identify the desired and attainable goals and tie it to a very concrete implementation plan with prospective outcomes. That's what I think it needs to be in a nutshell. Obviously, it's a very complex endeavor. And so, and then adding in these, they already needed to happen, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in adding the neighborhood-based planning and the downtown planning as part of that budget, because those will be integral to this comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Jason. I think, I'm sorry, did you have more?
No, I just want to make sure I at least started to answer your question.
I think we started, I think what's really complicated about this discussion is that there is a chapter called growth management, and what we are talking about is much more than what is just included in chapter 4 of our current general plan.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think that there are there's a lot of good in the general plan. I have in fact read it. And that there is a lot that we can build from. The thing that you said to me that is one of the most important pieces is that there really is this an outcome that is actionable in the end. So we're having a lot of conversations about how do we grow our city. And so I understand why this growth optimization term really came to fruition. But there does come to this point of brass tacks, when we're talking about where things are going to go and how tall they're going to be and how dense they're going to be and how that interacts with transit and how that interacts with all those pieces. And so if I'm understanding you correctly, what we keep calling a growth management or growth optimization plan does seem to incorporate all of these different aspects of the general plan, of a comprehensive plan. Or is there something that we are missing? Is there something that we're saying we're not going to look at this right now?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, I think it is semantics. There are plenty of communities out there that call their general plan a growth policy. It is a general plan, but they call it a growth policy. So I think it needs to be informed by our general plan. And I think we probably should call it a general plan so we don't have to change it 5 million times in the code.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
But yeah, in essence, I think it is like I mentioned, I think it is a dynamic growth policy that takes in all these aspects that everybody is interested in, and also starts to, as I think to his credit, Director Isaacson was trying to achieve with his growth management presentation, is to really start to not only outward but inward with the city, start to break down these silos and find these cross connections that we can benefit from, and all, the missed opportunities that we have right now because of siloing. And, it's not a discredit to anyone, it's just the way the system is, right? And so I think we can start to shift that and use this as a document to, find these interconnections and interdependencies between the city administration and departments and the community as each one of those relate to the community, right? And use this document as a guiding light. But then, yes, it does have very, at the end of the day, we come up with very actionable items that we want to achieve with it over the next 20 years.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. And as I do appreciate you speaking to that interdepartmental collaboration there. You and I have had a lot of conversations about how when we're looking at a comprehensive plan, we're not just looking at buildings, but also things like transportation and parks. The one thing that I don't see in here as much, but that I'll be interested is again, how this interacts with that community development plan. And I think that there's really a lot of opportunity there for that conversation. So
if I may, I feel like it'll be a section of that comp plan. That's Director Brown may have another thought about that, but that's my thought.
Wonderful. And I think that really is crucial that we do have these conversations, and that the general plan really is the place that this needs to occur with all of these different planning options in the city. So I'm happy to hear that it's semantics. I'd like to maybe straighten out those semantics, because this conversation is happening in a lot of different places. And so kind of getting this really secured down, that we're doing a general plan update, and obviously it's going to happen in pieces. This is a big pull, big push.
I apologize if I may. I'd like to make one more point of clarification, if you all don't mind. So on that note, I think that we're at a pivotal time in the city where, we don't have large expanses of land to develop, right? So I think that's another key reason why we do want this update to be colored, and focus in particularly on optimization, right? On growth optimization. I think that does need to be a, kind of a gold star, right? Amongst all the things we're trying to accomplish here, just because it is so critical. We need to be really cognizant about the infill, the land we have left, the resources that we have left, right? And how to best utilize those. So I think I think it's not coincidental, that we're focusing on growth optimization. It just makes total sense in the time and the period that we're in with in the history of Santa Fe.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how, as I said, that, why this terminology really rose to the top. But just making sure that it does have that comprehensive nature to it that we know that it needs. I did want to dive a little bit into the, $250,000 for neighborhood-based planning and then $100,000 for a downtown plan. I really like the idea of diving into neighborhoods. How do we not just, build buildings, but how do we really create neighborhoods and communities out of them? The kind of distribution of those funds with $100,000 for just downtown and $250,000 for neighborhoods, I would assume throughout the rest of the city. The downtown, if we're going to talk placemaking, the downtown is, it's much more made as a place than a lot of other places in the district. And so I am curious about that distribution of funds, because I know that there are a lot of areas of the city that need a lot more focus. And not to say that downtown, there's always opportunities there, but I really want to make sure that some of the parts of the city and a lot of parts in my district, which District 4 is receiving the bulk of construction these days. The vast majority of these new housing units are happening within District 4, and then District 3 following up pretty close behind us. So really making sure that, given that is where so much growth is happening, that we are adequately funded in really receiving these dollars for this placemaking, and for ensuring that we are not just creating kind of that suburban sprawl feeling in Districts 3 and 4. So can you speak a little bit more to that, of how these funds, it feels really imbalanced considering where so much of the actual growth is happening?
Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors, Councilor Cassidy. Thank you for the question. I could speak to it a little bit, but I think Director Brown and maybe Mayor Weber are better positioned to fill in the blanks on that. I think the magnitude of the funding does take into account that the downtown is, a district unto itself, so to speak. And then we do have 4 other districts that, that we want to, work on that those placemaking opportunities. So that's why the budget is larger. It's definitely hard to, pinpoint an exact number that it will take, but I think these figures will, definitely get us in the right direction for working on those initiatives. And I want to make it, from my side, I want to make it clear that I think part of the downtown initiative is to aid accessibility for the whole city to downtown, right? To make sure that people really feel like they are welcome and have access to the amenities downtown, even though they may live on the south side, and maybe vice versa also. And then these, the neighborhood based planning, obviously that's going to be more in depth and a little bit more tricky and probably long. I mean, I don't know if tricky is a good word, but you know what I mean? Like it's going to be more complex and probably take longer to tease out, what the needs are, and make sure everyone's, being treated fairly across the board and people are getting the resources that they need and desire by district. So I think that's why that proportion or that, that funding was a little bit higher. Is it enough? I'm not sure. But I think it's a good place to start, and I'm glad we're having the conversation and funding these initiatives.
Yeah, just, some quick math that if we were kind of looking at downtown, if we'd were to say 5 districts with downtown being its own district, that would still leave only about 62,500 for each of the other districts. So again, it feels really imbalanced based on where the need is. But I will, Director Brown or Mayor Weber, if you have more to add to that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassidy, thank you for the question, and I'll try to add a little bit more color, and maybe Mayor Weber would like to add something too. But I think that if we look at downtown as in the context of it being our beating heart of the city, but it's also changing, and it's still the beating heart. And I think Director Cook said something that was very important from a standpoint of that we want to make sure that downtown is being used for all of our citizens, not our tourists. There are a lot of people who live on the south side that never come downtown. How do we work through that? It is the pride of our city, but they live 5 miles away, but they're never there. And how do we work through a strategy to get that part put together? And also that the downtown is changing in many ways. And downtown, I'm thinking of all the way out to the rail yard, right? The rail yard's changing, right? And at the fact that we have startup companies downtown. We have housing issues downtown. We have a mix of outdoor dining is starting to come downtown. So there are a lot of key things that are very unique to downtown as a corridor that I think the dollar spent there, maybe we don't need it all, but I think that's a start for us because we need to figure out how to make sure that this center heart that we have is a bigger focus. And so I think as we move along with the planning and the development and the public engagement of it, we might say, you know what, maybe it only took us $75,000 to get to the outcomes we're looking for, but we wanted to start here because we recognize that it is sort of the original center of the city, and we kind of start from there. And I want to add also that this neighborhood-based planning, I've lived in very many cities around the country, and where I used to live, we were all very proud of our neighborhoods. And when I moved to Santa Fe, I realized that a lot of people don't know the names of different neighborhoods in the city. And I think we need to build that neighborhood pride. And that's a part of what this planning and placemaking is all about. Again, with downtown, people know that we have a downtown and they live, again, 5 miles away and they hardly ever come. And so this is a part of what we have. So I think if we take the number that's specific there out for a minute, I think that it is just a way to say we're just putting a small stake in the ground now to say this is what we think is going to happen because downtown is one of our most important spots, but it could change, that number could change. And we're hoping that we come back to the council and committees to sort of talk about what we think it's going to be once we develop sort of framework plans to present for further approval.
Yeah, let me,
question, sorry.
I can also weigh in a little bit because I think this is a both and, not an either or case. I think we've got very clear needs in all, many neighborhoods, many districts for what have been identified in the past as corridor and node studies. Specifically, we've got very heavily developed corridors that have been allowed to sort of grow organically or in a laissez-faire manner without a lot of planning. And then in many of those districts, they culminate in a node of economic activity. And I think we owe it to our residents to do a comprehensive look at those most heavily utilized and often focused on, but not planned corridors and nodes. And they're you know which ones I'm talking about because you and I've talked about this before, Councilor Cass, that those are the arteries with the specific commercial and multi-purpose developments at nodes. And to the best of my knowledge, we've never really done planning at that level to really focus on providing some coherence and guidance to where those developmental or development opportunities are and how to make them work better for each district. The downtown planning effort, I think, I don't have the actual numbers, but I have a vague recollection that over the last 15, 20 years, the city's initiated several different efforts to do some downtown planning, and they've never really led to an outcome that was adopted or embraced. And as Director Brown said, we're witnessing a lot of changes downtown, including in the rail yard. Some of it very exciting, some of it kind of concerning. I don't think the downtown as the heart of our city, the historic center of the city, the place that has the most emotional ties for our residents, I don't think it's gotten the attention of late that it really deserves. And if we simply assume that it's doing fine, leave well enough alone, it'll continue to evolve and everything will always be just fine with the downtown and with the rail yard going forward, I think we risk jeopardizing what for both our residents and then for visitors is perceived to be very much what Director Brown said, the beating heart of Santa Fe. So I'm very much in favor of devoting some resources rather than just accepting everything is fine the way it is and it doesn't really need additional attention. I think we need a both and strategy for corridors and nodes that are going to be significant in determining the shape of districts, how they develop, how intensely they develop. How can we embrace the idea of more mixed use developments, so residents in residential areas have services that are close by, and also regulate the development so it doesn't just get out of hand. Don't let it just be project by project. And then tie that in as if the arteries were feeding into downtown, so that there is a sense that the heart of the city is also getting planning attention and quite conscious choice making about development, signage, direction, attractiveness, accessibility. All of those things to me are going to determine not just the future of downtown right now and the future of our arterials and nodes, but also this is kind of the first bite at a effort to look at the next 10 to 15 years and how those pieces fit together. So I see them as complementary in that respect.
Thank you, Director Brown and Mr. Mayor. I do want to make sure that I did not say that the downtown was just fine and dandy. We could ignore it. I did say that there probably needs to be some attention there, but that disproportionately downtown has gotten much more attention than the rest of our city that is developing. And I do agree, nothing will ever compete with downtown as the historical center of our city. But we do also have some real opportunities at some other cultural opportunities throughout our community. My district, we are fortunate because we have Midtown. So we are currently getting a lot of attention. Also with the recent Main Street project in the Siler-Rufina nexus. Again, Rufina, that corridor is a lot, well, it spans 3 districts, but a lot of it within District 4. And I think for me, it really is this piece of, as these areas are developing right now, putting some at least equal attention. So I would say there is a yes and, but I know I hear it every day from my constituents, from constituents who are not in my district, but on the South Side, of this feeling that there has not been enough attention on that part of the city. And some of it I agree with, and some of it I don't. I think that there are a lot of areas that we are not given our recognition for some of the efforts that have gone on to the South Side. But I think that this is a real opportunity that while there does need to be, how do we continue to grow downtown? It is going to continue to be our center. It is where the plaza is. It's where, it's our tourist center. There's a lot of events that happen there. So yes, we do need to pay attention and we do need to continue to grow it. But there has been this laissez-faire attitude with development in other parts of the city. And I would really like to actually see these resources allocated evenly to other parts of the city. I mean, if we're not going to go on a, hey, who's developing the most, in which case pass that money over to District 4. But, we can do, if we can look at this, and I would like to see this money split more evenly throughout the districts. Although honestly, if I think about it from a really strategic point of view, yeah, I think that we should be looking at where is development really, really flowing. And then we're looking at Governor Miles and Richards, and then we are looking at Airport Road, and then we are looking at Tierra Contenta, and how are we really doing the placemaking there? We're looking at Rufina. And I think that we have an opportunity here. And if we miss it, we can't go back. There are parts of town that I wish that I could rip up and start again, but we can't do that. And so while we, don't have to do that in right now, while we have this chance, I think that we should really put that investment in at the beginning. And so I would argue for a more even distribution of downtown planning versus the neighborhood-based planning. I'll leave that conversation there. I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to think about this. These are numbers that I don't think that this will come back to us. Well, $350,000 if it's all coming back at once. So if we're going to see this in a contract or how we will have an opportunity to really see how this boils down. Jason, maybe that's a question for you. we may be allocating $350,000 for neighborhood and downtown based planning. Where is our check on this when it comes down to the brass tacks of it all? Or maybe that's a Mary question, or maybe it's a Rich question. I don't know. Go ahead, whoever wants to answer.
Director Klug, do you want to answer the question?
Sure. Thanks.
And if I can just interject here, it is 3:07. We have other counselors with questions. This is really important stuff, but we are sort of time limited here. And I don't know if there's we may need to look for other places to continue this conversation, but I do want to make people aware of the time and the fact that we still have one more budget to go.
So maybe it's just a quick yes or no. Will this come back to us when it's coming down to details?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll move on for now then. Let's see, what else did I have? Short-term data rental data collection. This does help with the administration of our new ordinance and making sure that we are in compliance and making sure that short-term rental providers are in compliance. Am I correct in that understanding?
Madam Chair, Councilors, Councilor Cassidy, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then we have 15 vacant positions, 3 of which you mentioned there are offers out. And so that is 12 vacancies. I believe when I'm looking at the crosswalk, which I know it looks a little bit off because some of the positions I know to be vacant that say that they're filled or vice versa. I see 4 senior planners vacant still. Is that accurate? The vast majority of them?
Madam Chair, Councilors, Councilor Cassidy, no, we currently have 4 senior planners, 3 that are in their positions, and then 1 that was promoted who will be a senior planner soon, who was a planner. And so then we will have 1 more senior planner position to fill and 2 planner positions to fill. 1 is the CIAC planner, and then 1 is we'll need a backfill for the previous planner's position, who they do things like PZRs, cannabis, and all actually most of the zoning verification letters, things like that. Not necessarily planning cases, but a lot of land use planning activities.
Okay.
And then if I may, in historic preservation, we have 2 senior planner positions that are filled, and we requested another one at mid-year that was, I believe, literally just advertised now, and that'll be I really appreciate that, and it'll be a big boon to historic preservation.
Okay, wonderful. And Jason, any of these positions that have been vacant for a while, you've been posting them and we're having a hard time filling, and can you tell me more there?
Thank you. Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think we've done really well building inspections, but those positions are challenging to fill. And so right now we have 1 plumbing mechanical and 1 electrical position that are unfilled that we've been advertising for, I don't know, the last year and a half continually. And we gradually have made progress, especially with that increase that we got at mid-year. It definitely helped. And so I think that those 2, it's just a matter of time. I think we will get those filled. I think we have we're where we need to be funding wise, and to make those attractive, and to bring in qualified people. It is always tricky getting qualified people to land on the list of eligibles, and go through the process and make it to the finish line. But HR's been really helpful, and I don't think it'll be a big struggle to hire those over the next 6 months. The plans examiner 2 position, that person, as I like to say, they really are a unicorn. Like, they're exceedingly difficult to find people that have those qualifications. We really need that position to effectively initiate the green building code update, which will include multifamily, which will require review by a construction plans examiner that has those qualifications. So we really need that position, and we've really been struggling to get it filled. And we're actively courting people that we know could fill it, but we just haven't been able to land anybody yet. So I see that as being an ongoing struggle. And again, it is tied to this, this need to expand the green code. So that one's a little bit of a pain point. And then as I kind of mentioned earlier, in building permitting, we're trying to create a ladder there. And so there are permit techs that come into the permit tech position and then they quickly climb up the ladder. You know, for example, I'm not going to name names, but anyway, we had a permit tech that came in, you know, around the time I came in. He's an excellent employee, and he went from permit tech to permit specialist, and now he's a project administrator. And so we're constantly backfilling there, and it's easy to, well, I say it's quote unquote easy to find permit techs. I mean, I think they're relatively easy to find because the qualifications aren't that high, and we have people that are interested. Finding the permit specialists, you know, which are the people that bring in permits, they really do need expertise with construction industries and, you know, reading plans, et cetera. And those positions have been a little bit more difficult to fill, and we do have 2 vacancies there. And so our project administrator really can't go into his role fully until we hire those positions. And once he's able to go into his role, he'll really start to fill, you know, and find and fill all these interdependencies that need to happen between permitting and engineering and planning, et cetera, historic, and not to mention the development community. So they're really, you know, firing on all cylinders as far as, you know, making land use work as effectively as it can where we are. So those 2 are pain points. And then we also haven't, we've been unsuccessful getting planners and the planner tech for engineering, but I think we've put those out a few times, but I think we'll land those positions sooner than later. We have one good candidate that will hopefully land for the CIAC planner, which is critical. And the good news is that Maggie Moore has experience with impact fees with the county, so I think she'll be able to help, you know, shore up that section of the department as well. I think that's it in a nutshell. You know, we were struggling for a long time on the management side, but hopefully we've managed that. Now we have people coming in, and it'll be a game changer from the management side for sure. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too. I'm glad that you guys are getting those in. So, all right, I will yield the floor. Thank you so much, Jason. I have some other questions that are mostly for my own edification. So as always, you'll hear from me, which you're used to. So, all right, thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Councilwoman Kessett, for asking thoughtful and important questions. I had similar questions about it, about kind of the philosophy around the structure and requests of funding. And I think we do need a more thorough discussion. I'm going to ask my questions first and then just loop back to the growth management, the kind of philosophical side of things for growth management code, and then also the neighborhood planning and downtown planning. But just want to make sure the chapter 14 code update, we allocated 320, we are adding 300. So you're saying the total now for that piece is 620,000.
Madam Chair, councilors, Councilwoman Villarreal. So we asked for the 320 last year, and that was actually allocated for chapter 14 and this growth management plan that Eli presented to you all, Director Isaacson presented to you all. So we're basically asking for that again because we just weren't able to get there last year. And so, so we're just asking so we're not asking for 600, we're asking for the 300 again, basically. And then the 41 is to, part of that we had to use on operational expenses. And then the 100K and the 250 for the neighborhood and downtown planning would bring us to a little bit over 600K earmark to support all of those initiatives.
Okay. Yeah, and you explained how part of the what was designated for general plan was used for operational needs, so that makes sense. So what did you say the total was for all the kind of planning?
My total, which Mary, Director McCoy may have a better number, but I'm looking at 600,000, $600,910 to be specific.
Okay. And then let's see.
Sorry, $9,100. I apologize.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like, so 900,000.
$609,100.
Wait, you said 900,000?
No, $609,100.
Got it. Okay, sorry about that. All right. Okay, I understand. I'm happy you said that on-call consulting was temporary until we fill those vacancies with our permanent staff positions. I think it's short-term solution. And then the piece about, I didn't quite understand. So the digital services consultant, are they going to actually be expanding the digital services? Are they just going to tell you, oh, this is what you need? Because it sounds like you already know what you need. Are they going to implement it? You talked about communications and customer service part of it, but I didn't quite understand like how it all tied in together.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal. So yeah, thank you for the question. So it is, yeah, definitely. I know exactly what I want conceptually, and this actually goes back to Director Johnson. And we just, due to COVID and budget shortages, et cetera, it was never implemented. But what we really want and need to do is to have land use completely integrated into the Esri system, so that people can go online and do a pin drop on a property and just get all the zoning information, everything they need at the tips of their fingers. We have that now with the current system, but it still needs a lot of development. So that's one aspect. And so I would want this I hate to call them a traffic op anyway, this permit tech that manages the communications. It really would be a mini CRM. So they would be in charge of managing that in conjunction with GIS and IT. And then also using some of the tools that come in that set with Esri and some of the other tools that IT has that are already being implemented with constituent services, basically integrate a mini version of that for land use to help us manage operations with land use customers and the development community. And
that's great.
Try to make that digital process more seamless.
Got it.
Yeah, just really just move into the 21st century, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. The accessibility piece as well. Okay, I'll move on to the short-term rental. So this is the software that we've had, correct? This is just adding funding to keep that software going for the short-term rentals?
That's correct.
Okay. Got that. All right. And then I think when I look at what Councillor Cassett was talking about, when I am a former planner, and when we did an update for the county, we actually did the growth management plan first because it was the vision, kind of like what was our vision, and it had a qualitative and quantitative piece, and it was really a values document. And then the way we codified that is actually through the update of the code. So I see us working a little bit differently here, and we can talk about that. I actually would love to circle back with you, Director Klug, to understand like the phasing, because it was helpful for you to describe the phasing and what would take place in each phase. But then I was starting to get confused, kind of like with Councillor Cassett, but mostly was from my experience of how a growth management, or in our case, a general plan, sets the tone. It sets a framework, and then we codify it with the code. So I'm confused about that. And maybe, I don't think you necessarily have to talk about it now, but if we could maybe just circle back with that, because I think there's a lot of different needs and what's the best way that's most efficient. And then you're adding in these other areas that make sense, but it's also like, how do you make sure that it's a process that's easy to manage instead of just like having these outliers and making it harder for your staff to like zone in on. So I've done this before, and that's why I'm like, just learn from it. Learning from it would be important. I know it's a different type of planning for obviously for the county, but it's still the same kind of concept. So the other thing I was going to.
Sorry, I'm happy to speak to that a little bit if you'd like me to.
Sure, if you want to, since we've talked about it a lot anyway, I think maybe we can, maybe Councilwoman Cassidy and I can circle back with you because to really understand that. Because I think there's probably some other reasons that we didn't touch today, but semantics are important though, because people won't understand it in the public about what we're doing. And I think that's the biggest piece to make sure that they understand what growth management means in the context of our structure. So.
And Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I'd like to just interject. I think that if we could set up another meeting with Director Klug, because I have one more department I have to get through, and I think it's an important conversation. And I'm thinking that I'd like to have Director Klug come to the quality of life meeting and get a little deeper into this, because you both brought a really good question. And I think this is a great place, committee, we can bring that up so that we can get some clarity.
Yeah, I think that's a great plan.
Wanted to.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then one more point about neighborhood-based planning versus downtown planning. I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague. I actually don't think we're in a space to say or talk about downtown planning the way it was framed today. I mean, I think both Councilor Lindell and I could tell you exactly what could change to make downtown a more vibrant place from what we hear from constituents, what we hear from businesses. I mean, it's really about the accessibility piece of it downtown and the need to maximize our amenities and potential to bring more people downtown. And Mayor Gonzalez was on the right track for that. He was focused on people to the plaza, and I think we are getting momentum and a lot of things have changed. I mean, we can't even figure out with a community member how to get a food truck down there. And we have this whole ordinance around it. So things like that just need to change, the accessibility piece. And I don't think we need a plan to tell us that. But I do think there's ways that we can look at neighborhood-based planning in those areas for growth that are certainly where we need to be. I agree with Councilor Cass that we're not looking and focusing on those major growth places in our city that have been, I don't think they've had attention at all. So I think we have an easier way to look at downtown that's right at our fingertips. So I want to just put that out there because I actually think neighborhood-based planning is more important. And the other thing is we don't hear from neighborhoods. If we wanted to have a vibrant city like Director Brown said about being proud of your neighborhood, block parties would be nice. And do you know how hard it is for us to make block parties happen? We have like major red tape every single time. So I'm just putting that out there that our heartbeat of the historic part of the city is downtown, but there's a heartbeat that happens all over in different parts of the city that I want to recognize. So I think we need to change our focus on that. And I don't know if that means that money gets allocated differently, but downtown needs a different type of planning that we already know what we need to do. So I just want to put that out there as placemaking goals into the future. I think that's all I have related to land use questions on your budget, and look forward to seeing those vacancies filled. And yeah, there's a lot of love that you all have been getting finally. And I think, there's a lot more that needs to be done. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, Councilor. We do have at least 2 more councilors, and it is 3:25, and we do have a hard stop at 4 because one of our committee meetings has another city meeting which he chairs. So again, I just would ask for brevity. I know this is an area we are all interested in. We need to have a conversation of how we have some of these more in-depth conversations because they're really important. And I know we have a high level of interest and a lot to say and contribute. So thank you guys for really asking these questions, but I just want to remind us all of where we are with time. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, and I know that we'll talk about these items later on, but I do think that District 1 that there is a fair amount to do with the downtown plan. You know, all the things that have been said, downtown office space, downtown parking, downtown transportation, those are all topics that are really deserving of a conversation. And it's not just about tourism. What I do want to though, and that's just a comment, I know that we'll have more discussion on that, but it's not a simple thing. So Jason, the thing that I'm concerned about is the same thing everybody else is concerned about, and what you're concerned about is that your department, many people depend on the inspectors and code enforcement. And I'm concerned if we have enough people. And when I hear you say that we've advertised for inspectors for 1.5 years, and then you did say you think that, that we'll get them in the next 6 months. What makes you think things are different to get them in the next 6 months? Because if we need to have the discussion that we pay more to get these jobs filled, I think we have to do that. I just have a lot of concern about having vacancy with inspectors and having vacancies in enforcement.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, yes, thank you. So we actually don't have any vacancies in enforcement. We're finally fully staffed. I take that back. We do have one. We actually have one new position that we need to fill, which is the permit specialist for short-term rentals. But that's new. It's definitely being covered by the existing inspectors. But once that position is filled, we'll be even better. And I think it'll be an easy-ish position to fill. Once that position is filled, we'll actually be fully staffed in enforcement. And I've seen vast improvement since I've been with land use in enforcement. We used to struggle literally every week with these just the minutia of the enforcement issues, and it's definitely gotten a lot better and easier to manage. The other thing that's related to enforcement is we do have the building code enforcement inspector on board now, who used to be a permit specialist. So that's perfect because he understands exactly what people, if we have somebody that started building without a permit, he can go out and meet with them and knows exactly what they need, to come in and get into compliance. So that was a really critical position that we asked for in the previous budget and we're able to fill. So the reason, and I totally agree with you with and that's why for mid-year, that's why I started with the request in inspections, because it's absolutely the most critical spot. The second one is planning, just FYI, but and that'll be, definitely my next ask mid-year. But I think based on the frequency of hiring over the last few months, it seems like we're on we've reached critical mass where we can get these people hired. That's my feeling. You're right. We may not, but I'm optimistic. And I think that relieving that compaction helped a lot. And I don't think we can do much more, honestly, without a class and comp study, because we've pushed the inspectors up where if we push them up anymore, they will start to have compaction with the supervisors. So I think we've solved that equation the best we can without a class and comp study.
I know we've talked about this in the past, and Chair, I won't go on about this. I'll just make a quick comment on it and yield the floor. A lot of questions have been asked, and I know this is a budget hearing. We're not talking about the form and function and purpose of land use. But I would hope that at some point in time, we would be able to move ourselves forward there must be some permits for very, very simple things that people could walk in the door and have some confidence that within 3 or 5 days, they might have a permit and able to start what is a very, very simple, small project. I think that a lot of these little tiny projects get held up because we are short on personnel. So I'm not going to spend more time on that. It's a comment, and I've tried to be as brief as I can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor, and I'm sorry. These are really important conversations. I also just want to voice, I appreciate Councilwoman Villarreal talking about the phasing of whatever we're calling it, growth management initiative, growth, plan, update to the general plan. It is a semantics question, but can we just pick something and stick to it? It is so confusing for the public. And also, I agree that I think it's backwards. People in this community want to talk about growth. They want to understand that what we are doing is appropriate, that it's aligning with our values, that we're not giving up on things that we find important. So I totally agree that conversation needs to come sooner rather than later, and needs to be the framework for all the internal nitty-gritty code changes and that piece. So I look forward to that, to continuing this conversation. I would like to know when this presentation or conversation happens at Quality of Life, because I want to be sure that I'm listening to what's happening and possibly participating if the chairwoman will allow me to. So again, very important. I just want to emphasize, I too am concerned with this. But again, the hour is late. We still have one more budget and we have a hard stop at 4. So with that, do we have a motion on this budget?
Clarification. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Lindell. I was going to ask that for the neighborhood planning, would I need to make a motion to combine that into one item of $350,000 for neighborhood and downtown planning? Or does it not really matter in terms of where the money is? Although that would be my motion, that we approve with the amendment to combine $250,000 and $101,000 for neighborhood and downtown based planning, and then we can hash that out when the contract comes to us. So yes, that's a motion, and approve as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any more discussion on what's happening? I don't know, Director, if you want to comment on that at all, or?
Madam Chair, yes, I think I can. So my understanding, and Director McCoy can correct if I'm wrong, that all of the planning budget will end up in one bucket. And so there is some discretion on exactly how we can use that. And I think it is appropriate to Director Brown's comment about, yeah, it may only take 75 grand for one activity or another. And also, if you don't mind, I'd like to also clarify, because I understand and agree with your sentiment and Councilwoman Villarreal's sentiment about like getting the cart before the horse. I think the challenge here is that there's an extreme urgency around both. And we're basically, dealing with the low-hanging fruit right now with Chapter 14, just getting the hygiene in order. But then we'll definitely have, 2 parallel tracks with the code and the general plan update. And yes, the general plan will have to be in place before we can do the phase 3 of the code update, which will be to integrate everything. So we actually are not out of order, but it will be in tandem for a while and then be in the order that you're speaking to at the end.
Okay, other discussion on the motion? I think we can do a roll call.
Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Cassett.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we are on to tourism. It's our last budget. We have, 25 minutes maybe. And if we need to, we will kick it over to tomorrow if we can't get through it. So Director Randall, you are here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. We've had an amazing rebound in tourism and in hotel rate growth. Lodgers tax through the first 7 months of this year are 8% ahead of where we were through the first 7 months of our last year pre-COVID, and 15% ahead of where it was the year before when we hit the high point of $12.3 million in lodgers tax collections. So we're well on our way to recovery. That's the great news. I've got a terrific team in tourism. Jordan Gunther is our Director of Marketing. He's on with us. David Carr, our Director of Sales. Those are the two leaders in Visit Santa Fe. And Melanie Moore, our Director of Operations, who's the leader for our Community Convention Center. I want to remind everyone we're 100% funded by lodgers tax, plus a small amount of earned income that we get from rental of the facility, sale of advertising on our website and in the visitor guide. In your budget book, there is a little typo. We're not down $733 million. I wish I had that kind of budget. We're down $733,000. So just that is a typo. And the reason we're down is because we've recovered $1.5 million that does not have to be spent on debt service. So in essence, we're up $800,000. But in fact, it shows that we're down a little bit in our funding, but we're able to allocate more of our funds towards the essential parts of tourism promotion and not be paying that $1.5 million on debt service. A few of the expansion items that I think are critical. We're able to add 5 new personnel, 2 security personnel for the Community Convention Center to deal with some of the issues we're having with homeless. We've not been able to get this through contract services, so we will be adding 2 security personnel if this budget's approved. Those personnel can also work with the third-party security that are in the convention center to make them more effective. And we're adding 3 new positions in January. The budget is only for half a year. When we reopen the rail yard visitor center, we're using the current rail yard visitor center staff. We'll use them to staff the new visitor center at Water Street. And then we'll be adding the staff necessary to get the rail yard reopened. $1.9 million in advertising. This year we were at 1.5 million. We added 3 million at the halfway mark. So we're coming into this year just slightly ahead of where we've ended up the new fiscal year, slightly ahead of where we're going to end up this fiscal year in our advertising spend. And I expect our lodgers tax to significantly exceed what we budgeted. And I'll be coming back to probably get some more advertising dollars to ensure that we're able to not only maintain tourism at the current rate level that we're seeing, but we're going to need to help our hotels and our short-term rentals recover with some of the occupancy that they're not getting at this point. And finally, we've got significant dollars continuing to be spent on the Community Convention Center to ensure that it operates, can operate well, and that it is properly maintained. So those are my primary comments. I want to thank the Finance Committee and I will our governing body if I get the chance for their continual support of tourism and for allowing us to do our job. I'd stand for questions.
Thank you. If we can stop sharing the screen, questions from the committee. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be quick. So the new security personnel, and thank you, Director Randall and your team. A lot of changes that have happened with the downturn of the economy, and hearing that it's picking back up is great news, especially for your budget. So just want to check with the security personnel positions. These are brand new, and is this like having them during the work hours, or will they be utilized for events as well?
The primary purpose will be at overnight hours from 11 at night until 6 or 7 in the morning, when we're incurring a lot of issues with homeless entering our stairwells and the garage and leaving it a mess. So we've had a drive-through service come through once a night. Generally, they kick out at least 1 or 2 people who are residing in our stairwells. And that's just one time a night. So, and it's almost nightly. So we know that, so that's during the colder months. Then during the great part is during the warmer months, they seem to move out, and the security will be rescheduled during the day to work with events and work and provide more direction to the third-party security that the event producers hire on their own. So we'll actually have trained security people on our team to work with that team to make them far more effective.
Okay, thank you for that. So I understand about the reopening of the Laureate Visitor Center. That's great news. These 3 new positions, though, are specifically for a new visitor center located on Water Street, or was there a space there before that I'm not recollecting that we used in the past?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, it's a new information center on Water Street in conjunction with the new restrooms. So we will operate, that'll be a 4th spot that will be able to provide information to our visitors. We're going to be using the rail yard staff that we've kept on payroll to initially staff it, but it requires 3 more to have 2 people per shift on at a visitor center. Okay,
so there's 3 new, but then we have those 3 already on. Was it 3 or was it more down at the railroad?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, it's actually 4 plus a supervisor. So we have
4.
5. This will bring us to a total of 8 in our visitor center operations.
Got it. Okay, thank you. There was something about the electronic access controls. Can you say more about what those are?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, they're just the card access for instead of keys, which will allow us to better monitor the locks. This came about because we had actually a key that was missing that we ended up finding. It was a master key, and we realized to remaster key this building would cost more than it would be to convert it to the electronic access that allows us to at any time disqualify a card if it was missing. So it really is a modernization of the building.
And that's just for the convention center building, right? Not for garage or any other office space.
Councilor Villarreal, just the convention center, that's correct.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And then say more about what the Douglas automatic lighting system replacement. I thought we upgraded that a couple of years ago. Is this something different?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, this is actually the system that controls a lot of our emergency lighting and exterior lights that go on and off. You may have noticed often that our lights are on during the daytime. It's because the system isn't working properly. And it's outdated software. We need to update the software and actually put a few more lights on it. What we did before was work with the lighting inside the building to convert it to LED, which has resulted in a lot of electric efficiency.
Great. Okay, thanks for the clarity. The other piece was the OTAB that I had asked about, and I was curious about who staffs OTAB. I thought the funding actually, because of the name, it comes from occupancy tax. So then I was trying to understand what the 100,000 additional goes towards.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, $100,000 is funding we use that OTAB directs. They vote, and they're the voting group. It's done through an application process to support new event or expansion of events in the city of Santa Fe, so that it's terminated at 3 years of potential funding for any particular organization, with the second year being half of the first year, the third year being half of the second year. So the idea is to provide some financial support to get new events or events to expand what they do to bring in tourism, and wean them away from it so that they don't continually come back to get funding, and we can move on and fund others. So this is done through the Occupancy Tax Advisory Board. I serve as the staff person to that board. And as you know, it is set up by the enabling legislation of the state to collect lodgers tax.
So isn't it also funded through that enabling legislation? There's a percentage of lodgers tax that goes into that pool of funding. That's why I was asking about the 100K, if it was additional on top of what's already allocated.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, everything that we do is through lodgers tax. So this is just $100,000 that's carved out for this event support. There's definitely minimum funding that's required of 50% going towards advertising, but it doesn't restrict other uses. But this just sets aside $100,000 that we can use to help events get started or help events expand, as opposed to creating events ourselves. It goes to third-party nonprofits.
Right, got it. That makes sense. So the total actual allocation will be 100K. There's no more left in that funding source right now?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's the maximum we've ever funded it at. And to fund more would frankly take away some of what we can do internally within our operations. So it is our recommended amount for that funding.
Got it. Thank you. When you get a chance, Director Randall, can you send me a list of who's on the OTAB board now, the membership? And what?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I certainly can. And you know, the makeup of the board is specified. There have to be 2 hoteliers or lodging tax collectors. There have to be 2 from the related hospitality, and there has to be, and then there's 1 at large. All 5 have to be involved, either reside in Santa Fe or have business in Santa Fe.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. And then last, why is tourism taking the lead to study to review the best use of repurposing City Hall?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I guess because Director Brown and I came up with the idea, and we were going to fund it from lodgers tax. So we felt that we would, we think there's a desperate need for that to happen. And in conjunction with a study of movement of City Hall to another location. And we just felt it would be better to be prepared with a third-party study that would, as opposed to all of a sudden rushing around to try to figure out what to do, or to have too much of a pause between a move out of City Hall and not be using that facility. It's a critical location. It's a critical opportunity for the city. I fear that $75,000 may actually not be enough. And I'd look for economic development perhaps to be able to add a little bit more if we need to. But we felt it was a study that needed to be done, and we'll get it done.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that it doesn't need to, or not saying that it doesn't need to be done. I actually absolutely think that we need to look at potential for City Hall. I guess I just don't think it should be in the vein of tourism, because it doesn't necessarily mean that will be repurposed for only tourism related potential. So I just want to let Director Brown know that if we do look at a study to review best uses for repurposing, I wanted to look at it holistically, not just for tourism.
Yes. Madam Chair and Councilor Vera, I think you're right. And I just want to add one quick add on it. It's like, think of it as a complex where the convention center is. If the city hall is moved, it's a complex. And one of the ideas that I had thrown out to the mayor after I had too much chai was that it could be a museum of the city of Santa Fe, because we don't have a museum of the city of Santa Fe. So it's just an idea that would come around, but it is a complex. The convention center is a part of it. You could just walk over to City Hall. But that's kind of where we are.
The location definitely makes the connection there
But
too.
Madam Chair, Councilor Vero, that's exactly what we don't want to happen, is just us coming up with a few ideas. The idea is to really take a look at downtown and say what's missing and what could be the highest and best use of this facility. And if it can resolve something that's missing in our downtown area. And I'm not picking on Director Brown.
Well, I can answer that. A lot of locals are missing downtown.
Yes.
Many more people to be coming downtown. So yeah, I look forward to that discussion about the repurposing. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Cassett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be very quick. I do want to, well, first of all, thank you, Director Randall, for being here and for your presentation. I also had the same question about the study for the repurposing of City Hall, and also wanting to make sure that while it is being funded from the tourism budget, that it does not only focus on what would be best for tourism, but really what would be best for the city as a whole, which we know tourism is a crucial component of our city, but there are a lot of other things to consider. And when we talk about that highest and best use, I think frequently we default to dollars, but that also needs to be juxtaposed with what the social highest and best use is. And so I do look forward to the study, but I did want to make that comment as well, to really make sure that that is a robust study, that there are a lot of different possible uses from a number of different perspectives, understanding that it is part of downtown, which is absolutely the center of our tourism fabric, but also, as we have discussed at length today, that it is also, you know, an important part of our city. It's really just a comment. We can talk more about this at length, and I'm curious. I know, Director Randall, I've had brief conversations with you. I've had brief conversations with Jordan about this, about how we are expanding our advertising to bring in different tourist populations. We typically have had kind of a set tourist population that we've really been looking at, and how we make sure that we are expanding the market. You know, we talked about this in terms of outdoor recreation. Millennials travel. In fact, a lot of millennials will say, I'm not going to buy a house so I can travel. And also because, let's be honest, that's a housing discussion, but we all know where I'm going with that. But I am curious how we are using those tourism dollars, how we are, or those advertising dollars, and how we are expanding our approaches to make sure that we are casting a really wide net, because I think that Santa Fe really does have something to offer for everybody, for every type of tourist. And so I want to make sure that we are drawing as many of them here as possible. I don't know if you have a quick answer to that. We only have 6 minutes left, but I'm also happy to bring this to quality of life, or to EDAC, or just to have a discussion offline in other places.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, first, thank you for the invitation to Cassett. I know I've done that before. Please, thank you for the invitation to bring this to quality of life, because I think it's a wonderful discussion that Jordan and I would like to have. Most of our advertising is digital, and with that, we're able to target interests as opposed to age groups. And the most important thing we do is bring people to Santa Fe who enjoy what Santa Fe is. And so by using that really targeted digital type advertising, we're able to cast as wide a net as we can. And I say that because while $1.9 million sounds like a lot of money to be spending on advertising, the state determined that in order to go into a new market, like a San Francisco market or a Chicago market, they can't do it for less than $3 million. So our entire budget is 2/3 of what they consider it takes to enter into a market. So we do broadcast it as widely as we can, but not so thinly that it's not effective. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. As we're able to add these dollars, this extra money, the extra $400,000 that we got both this year and we will have next year, and I think we'll be coming back to you with a request for more, we can use that to break into some of these new areas of reaching out to those people who enjoy what Santa Fe is and cast that net even further. So I totally agree with you, and I look forward to a lot of discussion about this with quality of life.
And Madam Chair,
Director Brown, we're going to turn into pumpkins in 3 minutes.
I just want to add on. I just want to add on to what Councilor Cassett said. So we also have our data platform that informs a lot of data about our tourists. That's going to be helpful with your question about how we inform and target on a wider net. So I just wanted to plug the data platform, the Santa Fe data platform, because that's another way that we'll know whether we're reaching our audience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both directors. And I look forward to diving into this more in committees. And if there are, I'll make a motion if we're ready for it. I'll move to approve.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I have a 30-second question to ask it and to get an answer. We're playing like whatever that game is.
Lightning round.
LED street lights on the plaza, permanent. Does that mean we're going to have the Christmas lights, the holiday lights up all year round, all that color all year round, or what's the thinking?
Madam Chair, that is the idea, that we could have lights up. This requires a matching from parks, and I haven't yet heard whether that would be in it. Whether we have them turned on or not is our decision, but on St. Patrick's Day, they could be green. On Valentine's Day, they could be red. Other times during the winter, they could be just white. They'd be multicolored at Christmas time, and we could leave them off if we wanted to at other times.
Okay, terrific. And if we could talk about the repurposing of current City Hall, I think we need to be talking about both sides of it, right? That we are looking at, is City Hall in the best place it could be, and what would we do if we moved it, and where would we move it? It's a larger discussion, and I think the description in the future needs to show that. All right, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Cassett.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, your budget is approved by the Finance Committee. That is our last budget for today. Thank goodness we didn't do ARPA. We would never have gotten through it in a minute. Do we have, Director McCoy, do we have anything else we need to think about before we adjourn?
Madam Chair, not at this time.
Okay, so we will see you same place, same channel tomorrow at 1. Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thank you.